Happy New Year to everyone. We apologize. We had a few challenges with the Zoom links tonight, but we are all together now at the open meeting. The first order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or subtractions to the agenda? Dr. Craighead?
I would like to strike item 5A, please.
Okay, and thank you very much. And I will, which is the presentation on the fiscal year 23 budget.
Yes.
And then I'm also going to strike item 8, which is the approval of minutes for this evening. Are there any other changes? All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Okay, second. All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. Wonderful. Okay, terrific. Wonderful. All right, we're going to start with the superintendent's report. Superintendent Jett.
Thank you. And while we're starting, and I'll keep an eye on this, if you could continue to send a link to member Betty White. I do not see her on here as of yet. But first and foremost, for those who are in attendance, I want to thank you. And again, I would reiterate, I appreciate your patience and your flexibility while we were waiting to make the connection to this link. I am joined this evening as a follow-up to last school committee, Wednesday, December 15th data assessment day presentation. Tonight, I have with me members of the leadership team for the Milton Public Schools. In no specific order, we have our data specialist, Vivu. We have our literacy director, Catherine DeRoche. We have our math director, K-12, Brian Seelig. We have our science curriculum coordinator, Christy Chiapetta, K-8, Milton High School science department head, Amy Tom. And we're also accompanied by Milton High School Vice Principal Ben Kelly, who is one of the many coordinators of the SAT, AP exams, along with MCAS and any other assessment data, and also English department head, Allison McHugh. As stated previously, and people did not hear this, the format would be the school committee members wanted to have this opportunity to have a follow-up to some of the assessment data. It was presented on Wednesday, December 15th. And so I guess I will open it up to school committee members to ask your questions. And we have a very esteemed panelist that is here to answer any and all questions that are thrown their way. So I'll open it up at this time.
Okay, wonderful. So school committee members, who would like to start out with their questions? And can I just ask, has anyone heard from Betty? Okay.
Yeah, she's having computer trouble. I'm not sure what's going on.
Okay.
She's still trying.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Member Rosemary. Anyone, who would like to start with their questions, or do you want to just start? I sent some of the questions to Superintendent Judd and to V that you all had sent to me. Does anyone want to start, or should we just start with a question that we had from the list of questions? Does anyone?
Why don't we start with the list, since those are already prepared, and then we can.
Wonderful. That sounds great, Dr. Gregg. Thank you so much. So Superintendent Judd, I don't know what I have the lists here in front of me. If there's anybody who wants.
I have the list. I can run down.
Okay, wonderful.
I can run down the list, and if I forget anything, or if there was something that was added that I overlooked, please let me know, and you can ask those questions. The first question, Vivu, I don't know if you want to pull up the slides. It was on slide number 27. I'll give you a little bit of time if you would like to share your screen, if you have capabilities to do so.
James, could you please promote Betty White, if she's on now?
I promoted her. She just needs to accept it. There we go. We're ready to go.
Okay.
Welcome, Member White.
All right.
Member White, we're just getting ready to ask the first question, if at all possible. On slide 27 of the data presentation, it was presented on Wednesday, December 15th. The first question is, what courses are 10th graders eligible to take? I will throw that to Vice Principal Ben Kelly. If you would like to share the response, Mr. Kelly, I greatly appreciate it.
These
Sure.
are AP courses. Yeah.
Sorry?
These are AP courses, sorry, just in case.
Yes, AP courses, sorry.
So typically, 10th graders would be eligible to take our economics AP courses. That's micro and macroeconomics. Computer science principles, a relatively new AP course at Milton High School over the past few years, and AP statistics. Very, very few and far between would a 10th grader be prepared to take any of the other courses. We have 21 that we offer, and most do have prerequisites through the sequence of 9th, 10th, 11th grade to be eligible for.
And again, I would go through these questions and I would ask the school committee members if there's anything that you would like to ask. If we could just get through these questions, we could always go back. The second one regarding AP exams, how are these students prepared to engage in AP work? I would throw that out to any of our department heads.
With a special focus on the 10th graders, just so you know. So V's going to share a slide in a moment that shows why I'm asking specifically these questions. And you will see that the 11th and 12th graders in Milton High School tend to perform close to the national mean, but the 10th graders are not.
V, if you could kindly go to the slide in question you asked, it gives a little more, elaborates a little bit more on the 10th graders participating in AP courses and give an explanation. I greatly appreciate that.
V is saying she's having trouble being heard. She's going to try to log back on.
Okay.
And if I can find it out, I'll share my screen. Hold on.
At this point, she just can't talk. That's the problem. Her volume, her audio is not working. Is that right? Yeah.
Without seeing the slide, I'm happy to take a stab at the answer. So specifically, how are we preparing 10th grade students to take the AP exam, if I'm understanding that correctly? Frankly, there are not a lot of AP courses that we are intentionally recommending 10th graders for. We feel students are best prepared to take our 21 different AP courses as juniors and seniors after they've gone through the progression of our 9th and 10th grade courses. And in most areas, prerequisites exist in order to give them the foundational knowledge and skills they need to be successful in those courses. The four exceptions, the economics courses are because we don't necessarily have a track through several levels of economics up to AP economics. Students who are highly motivated, strong writing background, a strong mathematics background, analytical thinkers may be able to jump into that a little earlier as a 10th grader. Computer science principles, same thing. You don't have to have a computer science background, so we don't have the prerequisites that we normally have. But again, a level of maturity and experience through a variety of courses would benefit students. And oftentimes our 11th and 12th graders are better equipped to take those courses. And AP statistics as well. Even in our program of studies, when you read that, you'll see that our prerequisites are there for course 2 and course 3 to have a successful and appropriate foundation of mathematical content and skills before jumping into AP statistics. However, historically, we have had approvals for a growing number of 10th graders who are ambitious and looking to take 2 math classes at the same time, jump into that class. So I see the slides are up now. If there's a specific question on the data, we can certainly look at that.
So I think it's on the previous slide. If you can scroll up, it's basically a slide that shows by grade level what the performance is.
Oh, sure. So that's showing a percentage out of the entire 10th grade class. There's only 20 something 10th graders taking it. So that is going to be an incredibly low number.
Right. It's a small end. If you don't mind, I can share my version of the slide so you can actually see the number. The reason why I'm holding on this it's not the issue that the N is small. It's that the qualifying scores are small. So how are students prepared to engage in AP work is the kernel, because I think if parents any person would want their child to be exposed to the rigor necessary to be successful in college, and advanced placement provides that opportunity. But if they were aware of the low rates of people earning qualifying scores, it will allow them to make a fully informed decision. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully it's disabled. But anyways, there's a bar chart that basically shows, and I'm going to read the numbers to you. In 2017, only 12.1% of 10th graders earned a qualifying score. In 2018, it was 8.7%. In 2019, 11.6%. In 2020, 6.6%. And in 2021, it was 8.5%. So if I'm reading this right, less than 3 students earn a qualifying score of all of the 10th graders.
So that is kind of inaccurate. And that's what this slide is trying to show you, Beverly, because it was getting clarification. That's what I was trying to jump in on. It was a total of 27 10th graders that participated in the AP exams. Out of the 27, 23 got a qualifying score, which is 85.2%. What was happening on that bar chart is because only 27 students took an AP out of the 269 10th graders. That's why we added that, because we needed to give you that clarification. Yeah. So that's
so I didn't see this slide.
Yeah,
that wasn't the slide that was shared last week. Thank you for the clarification. That's huge.
Yeah. Sorry, can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is V. Okay. I apologize for the technical difficulty on my part. James, is it possible for me to take over and share my screen?
Nothing is working right in 2022 here, people.
Oh, actually, it doesn't look like I can.
But no, I think the chart that James shared was very appropriate, because
I added that chart to explain that point, because I heard that confusion at the last time that I presented that chart, and I just wanted to make it very clear to people where those numbers are coming from. So the 8.5% of the 10th graders, that is 8.5% of the whole entire class of 10th grader. And when you look at of the entire class of 10th grader at Milton High School. So then the 85.5%. Yeah. So thank you, James. So the 85.2%, that is the qualifying rates of 10th graders in the AP program. So all 10th graders who took AP courses in year 2021, 23 of them got at least a qualifying score. And so that rate is actually 85.2%. But because we only had 27 10th graders out of the entire class of 269 10th graders at Milton High School in the AP program, the rate of 10th graders who achieve a qualifying score is only 8.6%. You see that? So
yes, that is a very big distinction.
Yes, yes. I just wanted to make sure that I put in this slide this time to explain that confusion. Yeah.
No, I think that's
both you and Brian.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. Obviously, you're looking at the total, but knowing that, because member Ross Denny and I had talked about this, knowing that that 85% can get a qualifying score of 3 or higher, it's very important, because if you're putting the time in as a 10th grader, right, to take these really rigorous courses, you want to know that there's the opportunity for you to earn perhaps some college credit down the road when you apply for college 3 years or so down the road. So thank you for that clarification. Really important.
And if you guys don't, go ahead.
I think Ada Rosemarin, member Rosemarin had her hand up. I apologize, Ada. I skipped right over you.
No problem. I was just going to respond to the same thing that James and V did. But the one thing I'm looking at is this talks about the number of students in AP courses. It doesn't show the total number of courses that were taken. Is that on any of these slides? Because I'm just wondering, or is that what this number represents, of all of the number of students and all of the AP courses? Like, I know some kids take a lot of AP classes, and are those all included in this number of students in the AP courses that you list here?
So I can't see people's faces on the screen to share my screen. So I will ask Vice Principal Kelly to follow up my conversation. But for the most part, most sophomores would take one course, but this is every single course that a sophomore is in. So if it's 27 students, more than likely they took one exam.
Right. But as they get up into 11th and 12th grade, as you can see, the percentage of students with at least one qualifying score goes down. The number of students taking it goes up, but the percentage with one qualifying score goes down. I'm just wondering, is that a reflection of there's obviously more students taking it, but are those students taking substantially more AP classes also? And I don't know if that is reflected in these numbers or whether it's relevant.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. These numbers, so regardless of how many AP classes you take, you are only counted one time in these numbers. And so this doesn't account for how many classes in total that, each of these students necessarily take. I had another slide earlier. If you can flip back a couple slides, that tells you one more, I think. Yes, this one. Thank you, James. So this one, it gives you the total number of students who participated in the AP program, and also the total number of exams. So you do see that, over the years, more students are taking more exam. So a lot of them, are taking multiple AP courses as they get into their later high school years.
Right.
And if I could just add a piece, and feel free to jump in, Mr. Kelly or Vivu, but typically as a district, I could tell you what we value as a district and a leadership, exposing our students to rigorous coursework. So we have open enrollment. So any student who wishes to stretch themselves a little without drowning and expose themselves to this rigorous coursework, they have the opportunity to sign up and go through that whole process. Whereas some districts might have specific cutoffs, which we don't, but we do require students to attend AP meetings. We require students and families to be aware of the AP contract and what's entailed. That is something that was expressed in the grade 8 information night. That's something that expressed in the program of studies. And then as part of the AP contract, I know last year there was a unified effort for Karen Cahill and some of the members of the department heads. They got together and did a presentation to share with families to let them know more about the AP. Obviously, bringing people in January, February last year was a little difficult to do it. So it was a presentation that was sent out, but typically they will have an in-person AP night to talk about the contract, to talk about the expectations. So again, is what do we value as a district? Is it solely the qualifying scores, or is it a combination of qualifying scores and providing our students with the opportunity to stretch themselves a little bit and give them that rigorous coursework experience? If no one has any question, the next question is, who is monitoring the students' performance over the course of the school year? And again, I'm assuming this is specific to 10th grade because it's under the same thing, but I think it will be consistent for everyone that's in AP courses. If anyone wants to take that.
So I'll be honest with you, I asked those questions because of incorrect data. I don't think we need to spend any more time on slide 27, because it's to go from 8.6% to 85% is a huge leap. So why don't we move on to slide 28?
Okay.
And Superintendent Jett, slide 28 and V, and looks at the percentage of African American and Hispanic students who and we're sort of wondering, do we know what percentage of African American and Hispanic students receive recommendations for at least one AP class before graduation? if that's even data that we track in the district right now?
So it might be data we tracked for the last year, but it may not be data that is easily accessible for previous years. But Vice Principal Ben Kelly, are you there? And I do apologize again. I just want to remind people I can't see faces while I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, I am here. So we do have course recommendation data from last year. We were able to dig into over the last couple of days to give you a sense of that. I want to preface the answer with just the reality of our course selection and recommendation process, where we intentionally don't have teachers recommend certain courses that are electives. So if there are courses that follow the sequence through 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, we ask teachers to make recommendations and had conversations with students before they go home, see those recommendations and make requests with their family. So courses like music, like art, like some of our technology courses don't actually receive recommendations because they're student choice and family choice. So specific to AP, we do not make recommendations for AP art, AP music, AP psychology, which again doesn't have any courses necessarily leading right to it, or AP European history, a senior level course, which was an elective. AP US history, however, we do make recommendations for because that would replace AP US 2 at the honors level for some students. It's another level of a course that everybody's going to move through. So having said that, we had 701 recommendations last year for this year's group to take an AP course, not including those 4 classes. 161 of those recommendations were for non-white students. That's 23%. And if you look at the 328 students who were recommended for at least one AP, we have 81 students, non-white, 25% of that group. I'm happy to, I have the numbers here. If there's anything in particular you'd like disaggregated, it gets into some small numbers, but happy to do that if there's specifics.
Oh, I would basically what I'm trying to get at is we can tell from this chart that there's a lower proportion of the African American student population that are opting in for AP classes. And I guess the question was trying to gauge, are we proportionately recommending people take AP classes, whether or not they're electives? Because I think that might be the first step in trying to understand why there's lower rates of participation. So if there's a way to discern as a percent of the entire student body, what percent of African-American students are recommended to take at least one AP class? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. Unfortunately, I don't have the historical data. So to answer the question, in their career at Milton High School, have they ever been recommended? I simply can't speak to that. With some time, we could probably dig out an answer going back a few years. But for this current class, this current group that is currently enrolled in AP classes, it's a little easier to look at based on the recommendations and then the course requests that were made on those suggestions from last year.
That would be perfect. Is that data that you have today?
For this year's group?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's data that I just stated.
You said non-white. I assume that included Asian, Hispanic, and African-American and multiracial.
Yes. So just for African-American only? Mm-hmm. Okay, so out of the 701 recommendations, 5% of those were for Black or African-American students. And if we look at the students themselves recommended for at least one course, that's up to almost 8% are Black African-American.
And what about Hispanic?
Hispanic, total number of recommendations, 3%. And number of students with at least one recommendation, about 3.5%.
Okay.
And that doesn't include anybody who identifies as multiracial with Hispanic or with Black African American.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? If someone could see if anybody else has any feedback.
Are we going to go through the other two questions? Margaret, you read this one, right? Could you go through the other ones too?
Absolutely. So
Well, I was going to go through them. I didn't know if anybody had any questions to build on.
oh yeah, no. I was looking, James. Sorry, I was looking,
Okay.
And I didn't
Okay.
see one. But I wanted to thank the Assistant Principal Kelly, Mr. Kelly, for providing that information. And I think to remember Ross Denny's point, moving forward as we think about data and disaggregating or collecting data, thinking at it at this level will help us to get at some of the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of years. Yes, James, Superintendent Jett, do you want to look at the rest of the questions around
Sure.
slide
If
20?
we're staying on slide 28, it says if all of these students were to take, and when I'm assuming, given that question, it's referring to African American students or Latino students. If all of these students were to take an AP exam, are there sufficient seats for them to participate?
And that's proportionate to their population. So for example, if African American students are 17% and Hispanic students are, looking at this with my glass, 86%. If we were to have participation at those rates, are there enough seats for them to participate?
Yes, the short answer is yes. We develop our course selection process to make sure that we get counts of requests, so family and student requests for courses, before we build out the number of sections and ultimately the master schedule. So just by virtue of the way we order the process, we're able to create appropriate section numbers and get the courses we need. Of course, if we still have courses that we need to teach. We haven't gotten to the point yet where we have so many requests in AP that it would necessitate us coming back to you in an emergency and saying we can't even teach course 1 math anymore. But yes, we develop the schedule and the master schedule based on the requests we get.
Okay, the next question is, what communication do we provide families to explain the 8 advanced placement courses? And I'm assuming the process, the value, the importance of the work. That's to you as well, Ben. I know you guys at the
sure.
high school. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. So it starts with 8th grade information night, and I know Superintendent Jett already mentioned some of this. We build in a little bit of an AP presentation into 8th grade information night just to make sure folks are aware of the different levels we offer. At that point, we are putting them off and trying to explain that these are mostly courses they'll start to consider as 10th graders into 11th and 12th. The program of studies is developed each year. It's being redeveloped into a more interactive website. And along with the program of studies, last year we started a program of studies and course selection website. So in addition to program of studies live night, which we've historically had with an AP presentation, sometimes with AP teachers, AP students who all take part in that presentation. Last year's had to be all virtual, unfortunately, but this year we're planning a live night with the same virtual component, which has videos, explanations of courses, and sort of the differentiation between the levels and information about our 21 offerings. From there, we have department heads that meet with guidance counselors and go over the program of studies. We have presentations in 8th grade classes to go over offerings. We have guidance counselors visiting high school classes to go over the program of studies and the course selection process as a whole. Guidance counselors are available, as well as teachers, to go over course recommendations and the process. We ask our teachers to hold meetings to go over course recommendations and discuss next courses that they can take. And then for AP specifically, we have the AP meetings that take place in May and June, the year prior to a student starting that AP course. As Superintendent Jett mentioned, that's the time where the AP contract is reviewed. The AP summer work, which is part of the AP contract, is distributed, gone over, expectations are set. And the policy that Milton High School has around all AP students sitting for the exam in May. That is part of our requirement that students that are enrolled in AP and get AP on their transcript participate in the exam at the end of the year. So all of those things, again, from 8th grade right up through each year, you have an opportunity to see again and learn about the AP program along with the program of studies and the course selection process as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And I just want to preface this. I do know we have some department heads here, but a lot of these questions are related to the testing program. Oh, Dr. Craighead?
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question for Mr. Kelly. When you have those informational meetings about the contract and going over everything, which sounds great, actually, do you, when the fact that sitting the exam is part of the contract, do you explain to families that if what the situation is on paying for those exams and what happens for people who can't afford it?
Yeah, great question. Yes, so we go over those, and thanks to you all and the superintendent's office, we're able to reduce over the last 3 years our AP exam fees. Normally, students and families were paying 100% of the cost, somewhere around $97 an exam. We've been able to reduce the family burden down to $40, which is consistent with the fees for sports and clubs you all have helped to reduce over the years. We've been able to do the same for academics. So they are aware of the $40 fee. We are able to provide a reduced cost for those who qualify for free and reduced lunch down to $20 as a student and family contribution. And then we have special cases. We work with students and families all the time if we need to do a payment plan over time or make other arrangements to pay for those exams. We do our best not to let any slip through the cracks and let economics be a part of not participating in this program. We make a lot of situations work.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that participation rates weren't sinking because of economic factors. So thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. And then how do we support students to be successful? For example, study habits throughout the course to earn a benchmark score, if I'm reading that correctly.
Maybe this would be a good one to get some specific examples from department heads, or I'll give it a quick overview.
We can, touch base with Director of Math for K through 12, Brian Selick.
Always happy to help Ben out. Yes. So it actually makes sense for me to start because I'll talk specifically about the role that the calculus project plays in the context of this question in a moment. But in general, for all of the students we have enrolled in AP math classes, which would include statistics, calculus BC, calculus AB, and then we have 2 computer science AP courses as well that sort of fall generally under the umbrella of the math department. The expectation, I don't think this will differ very much for the other departments as an AP teacher, is that you're willing to give up additional time to support students, both in the course of kind of the normal school day through the advisory period that we have built into our schedule, extra help sessions after school, and then sort of the above and beyond part comes in as the exam approaches. It's pretty common practice among teachers in the department that I lead to offer study sessions on weekends, well beyond school hours after sports and other extracurricular activities have completed for the evening. And there's sort of the best way to describe, I think, myself, a former AP teacher, is that it has sort of a coach athlete relationship, one in which there's sort of common goal and buy-in and support. And so I think with that commitment to being a teacher of an AP course is a willingness to put and invest in additional time and provide opportunities for students to get the whatever support they need, both individually and collectively, especially as the exam date approaches. With respect to the calculus project specifically, the members are provided an opportunity during our summer program in the first 3 weeks of August to get support from one of the high school math department members in completing the summer work and making sure that they come into the class well prepared to be successful. There's previewing of material that will be covered in the first unit. So again, students feel well positioned to succeed. And then there are tutoring sessions offered for all calculus project members, not only those who are enrolled in an AP course twice a week throughout the school year. For students who are struggling, members of the calculus project, there is a contract that's worked out with the co-advisors of the calculus project, Jen Garino, Claire Ritten, and Kelly Conity, who do an excellent job of essentially monitoring the progress and attendance of students in the calculus project at the tutoring offerings.
Member Rosteni, did you have a question? And then I see Ms. Tom has a question, or I wanted to say something, sorry.
No, so first and foremost, I just wanted to thank you both, Ben and Brian, for such a thorough understanding of what's happening, because this goes back to Superintendent Jett's goal of getting more students engaged in AP. And I think Member Eberhardt led with this. We know that we have lower participation rates for African-American and Hispanic students, and we now know that they're not being recommended. And we also know that we have capacity. So now it's an issue of getting more teachers willing to recommend, but along with saying that if there was a reason why they were reticent to recommend before, that in fact the supports are in place, whether it's your existing teachers who are pulling their time from advisory periods or through the calculus project. It's creating a safety net for kids. And it would be nice to see, maybe as we plan to go into school year 22-23, that we take a pilot of this, take a handful of students that we normally would not have recommended, and have the courage and the faith to recommend them for one of these classes where we know that we have this capacity in place for, whether it's for student participation or student supports, and then encourage families to take the classes. I'm actually quite confident that if a teacher recommended a course for a student, that the parent would be willing to go with that. I think many parents trust in the competence of our teachers and our directors in making a recommendation and taking risks on kids. And Brian, you did that for my own child, and I very much appreciate it. It meant a lot to him. And I would love for other kids in Milton to have the same experience.
Thank you, Member Rosteni. I think there's so much good information here that we can build on. And that's exciting to think about possibilities for students. Amy, Tom, you had your hand up. Would you like to add to the Mr. Selig and Brian and?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add that also College Board has added an online component to all of the coursework that really has increased accessibility and allows the teacher collaboration to go even further than it has in the past across all of our departments. I completely agree with everything that Brian has said, but I think too, in helping prepare with those specific application critical thinking test type questions, this platform that they've rolled out over the past couple of years has also been an integral role for our students to work not only with their teacher and their study groups within their sections, but if we offer multiple sections, there's multiple teachers, the students can work in that capacity as well.
Thank you for sharing that.
And then I would just add one more thing. I do know, and it's not mandatory, but I do know that the vast majority of the AP exams start in the early May. Many of the high school teachers that teach an AP course also do like a crash course, sometimes inviting students to come in during April vacation. It's not necessarily widespread, but some teachers do offer that opportunity. And it may vary from year to year, depending on their availability. So there is a concerted effort to make sure that the students get any last minute tips, helps, or questions answered prior to taking the exam. Thank you, Amy, Brian, and Ben, for your comments. I I think it was, that was it. So slide number 33, which is going to be slide number 34. Hold on one second. And correct me if I'm wrong, but. So this slide right here, I hope this is the slide. It's regarding SAT. It says, do we know whether or not colleges and universities will permanently discontinue the SAT requirement? We did have this discussion a while ago. The immediate answer is we don't know, but I don't know in the high school, in your conversations and preparing folks now, Ben, Amy, or Brian or Allison, if you guys would like to, anyone could jump in on this.
There are certainly a ton of conversations and a lot of advocates to get rid of the SAT as a requirement at different schools, but ultimately it is up to them. It is up to the schools. And we've seen a lot go test optional. We saw a lot in that class of 2021 that were temporarily test optional or did not require it at all. But unfortunately, we're waiting anxiously as well to see what the trend is going to be across the nation with colleges and universities and what they require for entry.
Okay, and again, I'm just asking folks to keep an eye on the hands because I can't see everybody. I can only see 3 people on my screen. So I just want you guys to know. Second question, would you please share what supports are available to students interested in taking the SATs? I will start out with that very quickly, and I'll give special thanks to the Copeland Family Foundation because many, many years ago, they supplied and furnished us with a grant where we encourage all sophomores and juniors to take the PSATs in preparation for the SATs. That is done during the school day to support students. And we recently, I believe it's the last 2 to 3 years, started administering the SAT during the school day, so there wasn't a barrier for students to get to different testing sites on a Saturday or have it conflict with employment opportunities and things like that. It was in school. So Ben, I don't know if you wanted to add a little bit more to that, but that was one of the things that I'm very proud of. That was former superintendent working with the Copeland Family Foundation to make that happen.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, those are some of the biggest preparations we have. The fact that our kids, except in one case of the year where we did have to cancel the PSAT while we were out of school for our 10th graders, to give every student the opportunity to take it twice is something that a lot of districts can't say. And we do it at no cost to the students, thanks to the Copelands and the district for working that out. So in 10th grade and 11th grade, you get to take the exam twice. In 11th grade, you can even qualify for the National Merit Scholarship with your performance on the PSAT, in addition to preparing for the SAT. The new score reports since, I think, 2019 that come out with the PSAT also give targeted SAT practice. Score reports link you right up with Khan Academy if you'd like to create your College Board account, your SAT account. And we'll actually work on the skills that you have the most trouble with on the PSAT. So there's a lot of resources available now, digital, that can help with personalized preparation for SAT. Historically, we have offered an SAT prep course as part of the program of studies. That was not listed in the program of studies for this current school year. The way it works is that group of students is shared between an English teacher and a math teacher. So they would alternate between them, semester-long course. And frankly, we just didn't have the staffing this year to offer that course with all the other required courses in the English and math department that we needed to put out. So that SAT prep course is not run now, I believe, in 2 years. In addition to the school day SAT course that was part of the program of studies, we've also historically offered Saturday sessions or night sessions for SAT prep at various times of the year leading up to big testing times. We were planned for that right up to spring of 2020. Unfortunately, that was canceled in the spring of 2020 with the school closure and was not brought back last year. But it is something that we're hoping to do again once test centers are more regularly having SATs in the more traditional times of year. We have done the school day SAT for seniors early in the fall, the last 2 years. The first year, we weren't really sure how it would go. We were still in the hybrid learning with their 2 cohorts, and we stuck 200 plus students in the field house with just me and another person on a microphone, but we got it done, and 200 kids got to take the SAT that year. It was a good time. This fall was a lot better. It was more normal with students in classrooms, and we had a lot of seniors opting in and appreciative of the fact that the Milton Public Schools was letting them do that on a Wednesday, modifying their schedule so they could do that. Every year we have 5-6 students asking us for help arranging an SAT on a day other than Saturday for religious reasons or work reasons, transportation reasons, can't find a test center reasons. And it's been really nice these past few years to do this in our gym or in our classrooms, often on the same day as the PSAT, and get a large portion of our senior class involved in testing right at home.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And then the last question under this, looking at the data with the lens towards equity, it looks like the Black and the Hispanic students and those requiring a fee waiver need differentiated supports. Do we recommend or provide any preparation services? Again, I think that was somewhat answered there, but we give people an opportunity, whether it was MPS-led or third-party service providers to students. So I don't know if anybody else wants to add in anything, but I think you kind of summed it up a little bit. But if there's anything in addition, specifically for African-American, Latino students and those who are requiring a fee waiver.
There's one additional piece I can point out on the fee waiver piece. The fee waiver situation is a little different for SAT school day. We no longer need to have the official fee waiver application and process. We're actually able to handle that internally. So we can look at any student who's already qualified for free and reduced lunch and issue them a reduced fee or a fee waiver, if you will, internally. And so that data is hard to represent. I think V has some notes on the slide that say, there were only 2 fee waivers. Yes, but there were plenty who took advantage of a free test or a reduced fee test internally through the Milton Public Schools. So just like APs, we have a lot of case-by-case scenarios, but we are doing our best not to let anyone miss out on the opportunity to take the SAT due to finances. We've found a lot of creative ways to pay for them and get students who need to test a test. And again, the Copelands and the district with their work over the last, I think, 10 years or so, no kid has paid for a PSAT. And we've had almost 100% minus a few absences participating in the PSAT each year.
Member Ross-Denny?
Ben, thank you for such a detailed description. I have a question about, I recognize that this is a tough year in terms of staffing, and that you had a course that would have been offered but can't be at this point. I'm wondering if the district would be willing to pilot a program for students to prepare, maybe starting freshman year or sophomore year, so that they have practice with the content of the test. Because what I have found to be somewhat true is it's not always an issue of the content knowledge, it's can you take a test? And as many of you who've taken the SAT, you realize it's test-taking strategies and whether or not you are prepared or if you can handle that. And it would be really interesting for whether the Copeland Foundation did it or we went through MFE to pilot a preparation program for those students who tend to underperform on the test. It's an opt-in scenario because I'm assuming that not everybody wants to, but to see whether or not we can move those scores up. I do think it's possible, and I don't want us to bet the farm on something without having enough information, but I think a pilot might be worth trying. Maybe pilot a cohort for 2 years of sophomores and freshmen, and then one with just 1 year, just sophomores, and see if we can make a dent in those numbers. I know the N is really small, but I think it's worth a try. And I would be willing to help you in any way I can, especially when it comes to funding.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It would be really interesting to see. I would just say it. I might like to see that program start the fall of sophomore year once we have those targeted results back from the first take of the PSAT, because a lot of that work is already done for the student and the family and possibly that instructor who would help with the pilot to see exactly what skills need to be worked on for that student prior to next year's PSAT and then signing up for the SAT. But yeah.
I think that's a great idea, and it might be facilitated using the free resource of Khan Academy. It's funny because I went in to look at it myself, and I had to navigate my way through the College Board website, but I did eventually find it. I can't imagine many people are going to be that patient, but it would be really interesting if it was a facilitated experience.
Yeah, and I think Member Rosteni and Mr. Kelly, that's the kind of use of data that really gets to the individualized differentiated instruction that supports students, like going to that piece of the data after you take the PSAT, after you know what exactly does each student need and how can you support them in that way. That would be terrific. I see that Cora, our student, has her hand up. Cora, would you like to join us? Hey.
Hi. Is my sound working?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a student perspective on that. So I took the PSAT this fall, and I had done a lot of College Board navigating because I am an AP student this year. But a lot of my friends didn't even know they needed a College Board account to view their scores. So there's such a lack of information there that that's something that you could work on, I think, through what Member Osteni was saying.
Thank you, Cora, for sharing. I was going to ask you if you had anything to say, so I'm glad that you volunteered. And that's really helpful to know. That's a simple fix in making sure that everyone understands and knows how to set up the account, navigate the account, and as Member Rosteni said, it takes a little bit of patience and time to do that.
Are there any other hands up, Chair Abahat? Okay, I'm gonna give Vice Principal Kelly a break.
Okay.
This one is gonna go to Kat DeRoche or Brian Seelig or Christy Chiapetta at the elementary level. Basically, it says, or elementary, middle, either one. Based on Alexia Rapid data, it looks like our younger students are struggling more. Do we know how many students in grade 5 and younger attended the summer enrichment? And when they say it's summer enrichment, I just want to get clarification. Are we talking about the universal program? Because summer enrichment is something different, which has activities, which sports, board games, and things like that. So it's universal.
I can't see me. Yes, it's the universal summer program.
Okay, so the universal summer program. Is there a way to disaggregate this data to determine whether or not they are performing better? I don't know if it's Kat DeRoche.
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Oh, thank you, Kat. Thank
you.
Sure,
I'll start off and then I know my counterparts have some notes to share as well. This is a good question, and it spurred some good conversation in the fall, returning and looking at data, as well as in preparing for this evening. The hard part with the Universal Summer Program is not the hard part, the good part. The intention was to offer it to all students, to give them an extra month of school-based routine, exposure to high quality instruction with their peers in the school. So to really, coming off of a really remote year or a hybrid year, depending on what a family choice was, to get them back in the building in a safe, small way. While academics were certainly the focus and what was going on day to day, the data collection piece, we used the platform of Lexia Core 5 for reading in particular and iReady for math. But in terms of looking for growth data in those 5 weeks, it wasn't that wasn't the main sort of focus. So we used the Lexia Rapid data from the spring and then used the Lexia Rapid data in the fall, which I think is what you're referring to look at how students did, but to tease out the variables embedded within that data is hard to tack on to the universal summer program. So in other words, to distill or crystallize a reason why students, had a dip or did better or not so great on that fall data would be hard to attribute to one program in particular. However, the other thing I wanted to note too, in particular with Lexia, just because it was noted here, in the K-2 grades, there are, and I can, if anybody is really interested and has a ton of free time, I can share with you the program materials for the screener. There are different subtests specifically in K-2, depending on the grade a student is in. So for example, in our kindergarten grades, there are subtests on phonological awareness because it's a huge early literacy skill that has very big implications for going forward. However, that skill is not assessed on that particular screener in first grade. So when we talk about a student ending, say, kindergarten in the spring, they're going to have different subtests in the fall. So it's a hard thing to look at that cohort spring to fall. What I will say in general, and I know this is maybe getting ahead of ourselves into some other questions, is that, like many districts around the country, we saw a huge deficit in students coming in particular in those K-2 grades when it comes to those phonological awareness. And I'm looking specifically, I know Betty retired, but Margaret's still in it. But knowing that students rely and teachers rely a lot on proximity when teaching a lot of those skills. And so when that data came in, the word that keeps coming to mind is a tenacious reaction to that data was taken by our teachers, our tier 2 support teachers, really principals all the way down, all the way across the board. So we are collecting our winter data over the next 2 weeks. There's a potential for a delay given the absentee rate currently, though I hope that's not the case. But we are doing that, and K-2 is one-on-one, so it's going to take a little, it's about 900 K-2 students district-wide that we do one-on-one. But after that time, I am hopefully not naively, but I feel pretty confidently optimistic that we're going to see some excellent gains in that data. So I know I got a little off topic, but I think that kind of helps to paint the picture of how the Universal Summer Program had certain goals that I don't know can be tied to a specific screener. I know in math it's a little bit different, so I'll defer to Brian for that, but I do see that Betty has her hand up and so does Bev.
So thanks, Kat, for that information. I was just wondering if you could comment on the enrollment for the Universal Summer Programs, because I know in other districts, colleagues of mine said that they were expecting more numbers, more kids to enroll, and that the enrollment was not what they expected. I'm wondering how much that factors into the performance that you looked at as well.
That's a really great question. And I would say, I'm going to speak anecdotally. I'm looking right now for an email. Maureen McLean, who is an outstanding first grade teacher at Cunningham, she oversaw the program, the day-to-day operations. And V, I'm not sure if you have numbers. I do know we anticipated, I think, when Dr. Spalding was here and it was in the early stages, I think the number was something around, we thought 2,000 kids would come. We thought this was going to be, we'd have to get the floodgates were going to open. Again, I think we were, as you say, I think most educators were hoping, feeling, wanting students to get them in the building and to really connect again. And I just think as we all now enter this second year, it was a lot and people were tired. And we didn't get the numbers, whether that was a safety concern, a fatigue concern, just wanting to have the summer. So you're right, Betty. I think the numbers and V, do you have, I don't have those numbers. I think was it somewhere around 50 students? 70? Oh, you do?
We have about 250 students in the Universal Summer Program across grades, all K-4.
So about 50
Oh.
per grade.
Okay.
Member Rossini?
Thanks. So I remember after I spoke to Karen very early, Dr. Spalding, as she was planning the Universal Summer Program, and she spoke with Chris Smith from Boston After School and Beyond, who had also launched a Universal Summer School Program. So she surveyed families to determine how many would come. So it's not as though she was just sort of the general public. She wasn't holding 2,000 seats thinking 2,000 would come. She ultimately did survey. I think she was pleasantly surprised that much fewer people were having interest in the program. So, resources were not wasted in any way.
Oh, no, thank you.
But I should have asked the same question of the Lexia data. I wanted to ask about math, but I think that your answer applies to both subjects, which is it was hard to make any causal relationship between your participation in the Universal Summer Program and reducing learning loss. So it begs the question, is it something that we should repeat next year? I know when I was growing up, I think if you got like a D or less or something, you were recommended to go to summer school, but I don't know how it works in Milton. And Janet Sheehan, Assistant Superintendent Janet Sheehan, was very kind to explain to me that the curriculum coordinators are rethinking the interventions for kids who are struggling academically. And how does that play into pulling up our students who were struggling because of the pandemic? So I guess that's a two-part question. Universal again, do we think the supports, let's hear about the supports that she's offering, because I think it's important for the public to know that you all have put some thought into this.
I don't mind speaking to that. So I believe sorry, I can't help but call her Janet. I believe what Janet was referring to maybe the Beyond the Bell program that we've tended to run in the past during the school year as a support for elementary age students. We actually are putting the finishing touches on the plan that we have for that program. And as eager as I am to share it, I feel a little bit reluctant because we haven't had a chance yet to hammer out the details internally yet, although we met literally today to brainstorm some ideas. What I think that I can share that's relevant to your question, Member Rostenny, is that, and perhaps this reflects on a missed opportunity with the Universal Summer Program. My understanding of how that operated is that students were relying heavily on the two programs that Kat mentioned, Alexia Core 5 for ELA and the iReady personalized instruction platform for math. And as we move forward, both with the Beyond the Bell and looking ahead to what, if anything, we decide to offer for additional support for students in need over the summer, we recognize that at least a balance, and if not a emphasis on resources that are a little bit more teacher-led and a little bit more targeted to specifics, to student-specific needs, inevitably, I believe, will be to the benefit of the students who participate. One of the sort of questions that comes up when you talk about these opportunities for additional learning experiences and narrowing the gap, specifically now in the aftermath, or I guess it's not appropriate to say that either, but during and throughout the pandemic, as far as unfinished learning goes, is whether it's something that you make available to anyone and everyone, or whether you really restrict it to those that the data shows is of highest need and work from there. So that's, again, maybe a bit of a distinction that I would draw from how we did things last summer compared to how we will do Beyond the Bell. And I think how I would advocate that we do anything over the summer moving forward is to be very intentional about identifying students with the most current data that we have. In the case of Beyond the Bell, we'll rely on the data that we're collecting currently from our elementary age students, both in the form of the iReady Winter diagnostic and the Lexia Rapid benchmark that Kat spoke of. So I don't know if that answers the question. I don't know if I'm prepared to say myself what my feeling toward the summer is. I think there are students who need more than we're able to provide during 180 days and whatever the length of the school day is, Monday to Friday. So I think that where there's the investment of money and resources, I think we should aspire to make that that opportunity available, and the responsibility falls on us to make sure that we're delivering the best learning experience with the best possible results that we can. And that may include having a tool, an assessment that we're not currently using as a way to try to measure what that growth looks like over those sort of interval periods of time where these opportunities exist.
I think too, just to add one more piece, I think last year, the data we collected, even with the tools we had in place, involved some really creative strategies. They weren't developed with COVID in mind, as most things were not. So we were administering literacy assessments remotely, one-on-one, in a very creative way. But while it was good information, I don't know that using that to drive a program and exclude students who maybe didn't make the cut. But I think going forward, we have, going into next summer, we could certainly triangulate it with something like Brian was referring to, maybe something we don't use now, to really target student populations in using multiple measures. And then really measure whatever we're targeting in instruction to see the growth, to analyze whether it was a good use of funds and time for students. I think that's true.
Assistant Superintendent Sheehan.
So I just thank you, Mr. Seelig and Mr. Roche. I did want to add that we are excited about a communication that will soon go out to parents to let them know that there will be what we believe will be an invitation-only program over our school vacations. But again, as Mr. Seelig said, we're still developing this. We don't have a lot of time between now and February vacation, but we are waiting for that winter data. And we're really excited about trying this program. And so we'll be informing you very soon about it.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Sheehan. And thank you to Kat and Brian for their updates. Kat, as I was listening to you talk about tying, and to Beverly's questions about tying the summer program to the data from the Lexia and the other Rapid, whatever the other tool is. I'm so sorry that I can't remember. I was thinking that there probably is one type of tool that you could use, whether or not that students who attended a structured peer-involved program over the summer had improved social emotional learning skills over time, right? So you could really use that to see, because really the benefit of having structured time over the summer, in addition to supporting academic growth, particularly in a continuing pandemic world, is to provide those social emotional opportunities, particularly at the K-2 level, which is what, if you talk to your K-2 teachers right now, and I'm sure you are talking to them, of course, that you're seeing a lot of those issues for young students, right? It's not just about the academic piece. It's about being back in a room full of people, and you're in a museum looking around at people now, right? It's not the same experience for them as it was 2 years ago. But you could probably tie over time and look at, did those students socially emotionally have a better adjustment to school, to the school day as they came back to full in-person learning? Just a thought.
And Maureen McLean did note when we were checking in about this and sort of, asking about the day-to-day, and she did say the biggest takeaway, every day she saw kids and teachers running into the building, excited to be there, excited to be in with peers and with teachers. And I think that's what stood out to me on her reflections, was the social emotional piece and the and again, not to diminish the academic focus that was exceptionally done by the teachers, but I think, like you're saying, I think in the moment that was really the priority. I think it's hard too in these times, but setting some priorities. We want to do it all, and we want to do it all right now, but it's, we have to bring the levels.
Right. And I think one of the hardest parts for parents to understand is that, like, I don't know, if you look at like the second step social emotional learning program, and you look at that longitudinal data over time, it's really those skills you develop that lead to long-term academic success for students, right? It's not just, yes, the foundational academic skills are important, but building those other social emotional skills really lead to long-term academic success for students. So I don't ever think you can underestimate the value of that, and the thanks to all the teachers and paras and support staff who worked over the summer to help students that way, and all of you as well. I do think long-term that those benefits will play out over time for students, especially in this pandemic world.
So there's a couple of things I just want to bring to your attention. We're approaching 8:30. We're still on section number 1, and I have 10 more questions to go. I just want to be very clear. So basically, one was, can we do a presentation outline the COVID relief fund specifically to interventions? Absolutely, we would do that. Knock that off. And if people just please, can we please get an update in the future from Brian Selig regarding the status of the math curriculum? Absolutely, we could do that. He plans on doing that. That's number 2. Can we talk about the investments in PD on implicit bias to target the disproportionalities in discipline in special ed, as well as teacher referrals to AP? You heard a little bit about that. Suma Selly talked about some of the PD work that we're doing in terms of restorative justice, some of the positions we're getting to try to address the issue on disproportionality in special education and discipline referrals. And Ben Kelly talked a little bit about APs, and Cora talked a little bit about the College Board, making sure all of our students are aware about these college accounts for SATs. So again, I'm speeding through it, but if people want me to stop, let me know. The next one is, can you describe?
Superintendent Jett, sorry, I'm interrupting you. We can definitely, I know that Assistant Superintendent Dexter is not here this evening. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
So I think that to the point, to the question about the COVID relief funds, and also thinking more about how investment in PD would support training on implicit bias and disproportionalities, we can put those at another school committee meeting in the near future, so that we can have a more in-depth conversation. Because I do think that particular question, number 3, is really important to think about to get at some of the other things that we've been talking about.
Without question, in addition to the slide and things like that, as part of the calendar, I said it to you guys very early on in the summer, one of our early meetings, or early in the fall, because when we start talking about the calendar, I'm also going to ask for potentially anywhere from 3 to 4 delayed starts, which for PD. I think that's very important, so we can have that uninterrupted time. It doesn't have an impact on 180 days, and it will not have an impact on our 990 hours of teaching time on learning. So I do want to put that on there, because I think that's very important with all of these priorities that we have as a district, having that uninterrupted time. And I would say a delayed start versus an early release. A delayed start, that gives us that uninterrupted time. An early release, we could run into student issues during the day that pulls us away from certain things, coverages and things like that. So again, I'm going to keep that at the forefront of the conversation about the calendar. I think that's very important. So yes, some of these we could do. Can you describe interventions that are currently being used or being implemented to address learning loss for students? I would talk, anyone, if you want to take that very quickly. How about we go to Christy Chiappetta? I feel badly she's on this meeting. It's 8:30. I would love to hear her voice. Go ahead, Christy, take that.
Well, science is a little bit unique to math and ELA in that we're tested in grade 5 and grade 8. And so our data is really based on 3 years of standards, which in some ways gives us a nice opportunity to cushion some of the COVID challenges academically. But we actually have some interesting data, particularly in the middle school. Our internal data last year was showing us that our common assessment data was showing that students were performing at the same level they had been prior to COVID. We didn't seem to have specific learning loss at the middle school, or it wasn't showing up in our data. And our MCAS data, at least for the 8th grade students, was pretty consistent. At the lower level, it was a little bit more challenging because science was harder to implement. just given the inability to use materials in the same way. So there were some things that had to be cut out. It just in general happened a lot less, and there was less hands-on. So what we've done for elementary science is we have unit guides for each of our units that we developed in grades 3 through 5, which identify priority investigations and priority standards that we're targeting. And then we have some other ones that would be sort of the less essential content that are optional. So the idea is to, once you get through the priority investigations, then we've identified the next tier of investigations we'd like teachers to target. For K through 2, the focus is more on just having kids doing science, because we think it's just essential to have kids build a love of science and sort of get that hands-on experience there. So we're less worried about learning loss and more about how do we bring back science into those classrooms for students who had a limited experience in the prior grades. So that's a quick overview of what we've been doing. I do think at the middle school level, we tend to focus a lot more on specific standards and really targeting them. And unlike math and ELA, which are tested on an annual basis, we're able to identify, and I know this is one of the later questions a little bit around consolidating standards, we're able to identify which standards get assessed more frequently and sort of some more power standards relative to some of the other ones. And so we prioritize those at this time. And then while we do a pretty good job of covering all of the science standards in probably, I would even say, the one I've been tracking in 3 through 8, at the middle school level, we're a little more focused because we have more time. And I would say that for those standards, we have some that we know we're gonna make sure we hit, and if we didn't hit them in 7th grade, we will revisit them in 8th grade at the end of the year before students are assessed and before we send them up to high school. But for the most part, I think we've done a pretty decent job of identifying the most essential content students would need for building blocks leading up to Milton High School. I don't know if there are any science-specific questions. I'm happy to answer any of those.
I see Dr. Carroll has her hand up. Thank you, Christine.
My question was actually from before, not about science. So that's
okay. I mean, that's totally fine. Thank you, Christine, for sharing. Christy, if anyone had a specific science question, otherwise we can let Dr. Carroll ask her question. Go ahead, Dr. Carroll.
Sure, thanks. So I recognize we don't have time tonight right now, but just kind of building off the other question, requesting the presentation in the future once Assistant Superintendent Dexter can come back and kind of lay out for us, like, what were the COVID-related investments that we've been able to make in positions as interventions for unfinished learning or learning loss. I think what I'm realizing through hearing this discussion, which is terrific, and thinking back to what V was able to share in that really rich presentation at the previous meeting, could we possibly get a report or a presentation that maybe like a collaboration between Assistant Superintendent Dexter and Assistant Superintendent Sheehan, where we have not only the financial investments that help us understand what interventions are we making this year in reaction really to that data around unfinished learning, but not only the kind of financial side of that, what are the instructional practices that have been put in place that are different, that we are doing this year that we haven't done in the past, but that are specifically designed to address that data that we saw V present, specifically in the literacy and math, and really most urgently in those younger grades. So a lot of the conversation that we've been having tonight, I think many of these threads are like woven through this. I feel it would be helpful for me as a school committee member, but I also think it could be useful for the community to just have in a consolidated way, like, this is what is being done, to reassure people who may have seen that data presentation and, like me and many of us, had a feeling of like, wow, we have so much work to do. We know that a lot of work is happening. My my wonder is how much of it is known and understood. So I understand what my second grader is experiencing at one school. I think it could be helpful for people to understand bigger picture, like not just what their child might have access to or what some of their child's classmates may or may not have access to based on the formative assessment data, but what is like, get all these interventions listed in one, report or whatever it may be, so that people can just see it like in a clear way, the response. I don't know if that is feasible or makes sense, but I know that several of us in the questions going forward were asking essentially similar questions, like please describe the interventions, this and that. And I'm just wondering if something like that could be prepared offline could supplement this discussion in a helpful way to communicate that, a little bit even more effectively. But I really thank everybody for the discussion.
Thank you for that inquiry, Dr. Carroll. So I guess my question is, if that's going to be another presentation, do you want me to go through these other questions that are related to what you just shared, or do you want me to just go through them?
Dr. Carroll, you can jump in, but I have a thought about that too. So go ahead. No, I'm thinking Superintendent Jett that there is one question I would like for Member Rosemarin's question. If V has some ideas about early childhood, I have some ideas, but I do think that because some of the questions that were on here, as Dr. Carroll just said, I was asking about the consolidated curriculum, as Mr. Pettit just shared with us, thinking about how you're adapting instruction, not just beyond the bell, but how you're using small group instruction in the classroom. What are you doing that's different than, similar to, or enhanced from years that you've done in the past? So I think we could save those for a final summary, I guess, of how we're using not only the financial power that we have through the funding, but also the human investment in the day-to-day work with students. So we could save that for sure, I think. Dr. Carroll, does that make sense to you?
Yes, and sorry, I didn't mean to sort of usurp or say don't answer the questions now. I'm not.
No. I was thinking
trying to say anything
thinking,
like that, but just beyond whatever this discussion ends up being, I just think that that could be, and a summary is the word. That's the word. It's like helping people understand, K-5, here's literacy. This is what we're doing. K-5, math, these are in place, positions, programs, beyond the bell, and, just helping everybody see snapshot of that. And then middle, math, literacy. And I just know that I hear people asking questions, and there's a sense from some places that there's just, maybe not enough being done. And I feel like, there's just a lot being done, but it's pockets of awareness of what's being done. So sorry, I did not mean to suggest how you should approach the rest of the question, Superintendent Jett.
No, I don't.
I didn't take it as a suggestion. I was just asking for clarification.
Yeah. No,
where we are in the meeting. That's all.
Yeah, no, I think to both your points, I do think that and as Kat shared with us, that when teachers saw the data, they themselves had like that moment, right? When you and parents too, that wonder. And I do think that having a more summarized presentation or information, and then comparing the investments in those two ways would be really helpful for the community and for us as well. So I think Superintendent Jett, that would be a great way to move forward from this. But I would like Ada had a question about early childhood and whether or not
Ada's question is, I've been thinking a little bit more about the 35% of the third graders who are still not meeting MCAS reading expectation. This has been a challenge in Milton for many years, made worse by the pandemic. Is there a way that we can analyze which of the students participate in the MPS, Milton Public Schools pre-K program? I'll be very interested to know if we are seeing a positive impact of those programs, whether or not there is a quote unquote dosage that makes more of a difference in the numbers of days per week and hours per day. So that's the first part of the question. So I would throw that to Kat as the elementary literacy person. Is there a correlation between those who have participated in the pre-K program and the quote unquote dosage, whether it's more days a week or more hours a day? And Ada, correct me if, Member Rosemary, correct me if that's not the, okay, that's good. She said that's the first part of the question, and then I'll follow up with the second part.
Okay, so I did not, when this, and this is just a logistical, when I got these questions, they looked like separate questions. So, but I will tell you that when like any, as you know too, I'm sure, any evidence and research that's been does show very strong positive correlation between pre-K engagement, especially high quality engagement in high quality pre-K programs and early literacy, and then beyond skills that they have a foundation for. I do think I did, as we do every year, we did in the fall go back to the last 5 years of MCAS data and looking at students who both didn't meet or partially met, and then just students who didn't meet at all in third grade in particular, as that is a pretty critical year. And V, I don't know if you read the question differently and have that specific information about third graders who participated in pre-K and what their MCAS scores looked like, or what their MCAS scores looked like. But I will say that, in particular, it was interesting, like most districts, we went from in 2019 having 25% of students either partially meeting or not meeting. Of that 25%, only 5% were not meeting. And I'm not diminishing that 5% is not a population that we need to bring up with us. But that's the distinction is there. It then went up to 35% this past year. Still not the percentage we want, but given all the variables, I might expect that to be even higher, given that they had a truncated first grade and a very atypical truncated second grade and an atypical third grade. And so, as we would any year and as we've been doing, we have looked at that data along with our screening data, triangulated with other curriculum embedded assessments. We did, thanks to the work of this group and others, we were able to hire last April or March, a third grade district-wide reading specialist. And that position works in all 4 buildings and really targets our students who identify as having or in the lowest percentile ranking in the area of reading comprehension. That has pivoted a little bit, as we know the instruction of students who are currently in the third grade had a very unusual exposure to phonics. So that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means it looked very different for 2 years. And so in particular this year, last year, and then next year, we anticipate to really make sure that those skills are shored up in third grade, which typically or don't always need to be by that point, because in a typical third grade, we've moved beyond that or it's quickly remediated with intervention. So that is currently what the practice is. We'll of course continue to use targeted supports in the classroom as well in both the tier 1 and the tier 2 in the tier 2 model. I don't know if there are other comments anybody wants to make about that correlation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Kat said, in that if we were to go back and track the data of the percentage of students meeting or exceeding expectation in third grade reading on the MCAS back in 2016, when it was still let's just go with 2017, when we had the first version of MCAS, the next generation MCAS, the percentage of students meeting and exceeding expectation was 64%. And we're basically back to that level now at 65%. So from 64% in 2017, in 2018, we were able to bump up to 75% meeting and exceeding with the investment in the new literacy curriculum and focus on phonological instruction at the lower grade. Like that really helped us to build that foundation. In 2019, we were still at 75%. So we were on an upward trajectory. 2020, we didn't have an MCAS, and 2021, impact of the pandemic, we're back to 65%. So you can see that, you know, all the gains that we've made over the past 3 years have been kind of absorbed by this pandemic. And as Kat said, you know, we are now looking at all, you know, any kind of assessments, evidence that we have on our students to make the best instructional decisions that we can in this current environment. So that makes the data tracking a little bit more challenging because the current environment no longer reflects what was, you know, the investment that we put into these students as pre-K student. So to look at what is happening now and tying it back to what the expectation was when we originally got them into the system as pre-K, it's a little bit apples to oranges because the environment has changed so much. So what I can say is, you know, we can certainly go back and try to track that data, but I just don't know how valid it can really be because of this upheaval in this new MCAS testing environment. So we can still do that and we can see what we glean from that. But that is kind of where we are right now. We're kind of focusing on the current data collection of, you know, our new students and what we need to be providing for them in this current climate, as Kat said. But we'll certainly go back and see if it makes sense to match the data up of our pre-K students that we got back then to, you know, MCAS right now, which I think it's going to be a little bit challenging to make that correlation, but we can do that.
Member Rosemary.
Thank you for your responses. And I totally understand that there's been a lot that's happened between when those students were in preschool and when they got to third grade, that it makes it very difficult to track and see any either correlation or causality. But I think it's worth our keeping an eye on those third grade reading scores, and in particular those students who are not proficient by third grade, because it is such a strong indicator for success later on in school. And I think we've really got to focus our efforts there and you know, moving forward, if investing more in quality preschool programs that we are already providing to serve more children, if possible, then let's do it.
Yeah, thank you, Dee and Kat. I will say, Member Rosemary, and I can share with you that a lot of the research shows that the gains that students make academically after third and fourth grade sort of even out in terms of the preschool quality program, but that the long-term benefits of preschool programming show up in later life choices in terms of going to college, in terms of career, in terms of the choices that you make for your life in general. There's a great paper that came out early this in 2021 that used the Boston preschool program because it was a randomized sort of lottery program for the last 20 years that really depicted that piece that shows that it's the lifetime benefit of an early childhood program that really supports students. So I think anything we can do to grow our early childhood program for preschool would be a good thing for students in Milton and anywhere, because it really does play out over time. Even if the academic gains are less in the beginning, the long-term benefits are immeasurable in many ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You and I are. Yeah.
So we're on the same page.
We're on the same page. Let's go, Ada. Let's go. Let's build that early childhood center. Come on.
Yeah, and you know, not to mention the parent involvement in those programs and from an early age, and how important that is, bringing their students forward after having those experiences. So thank you.
Thank you to everyone tonight for their presentations, and really, I'm sort of awed of all the work that you did, and we're looking forward. This has been such an informative. I know it was another lot of conversation, but it's just really heartwarming to see all the hard work and dedication that you all have for students and for the teachers as well in Paris. So thanks to everyone, and Superintendent Jett and Superintendent Sheehan as well, and Superintendent Dexter.
I just want to say thank you to all, and I appreciate their endurance. I owe them all a lunch. I told them no more than 35, 40 minutes. It's been a couple
It's a marathon, Jay.
but we appreciate that. So
get an expensive lunch, Roost Chris.
That's all right. It's definitely worth it. So
Jay.
thank you guys all. You're more than welcome to stay on for the rest of the school committee meeting. I'm sure you guys are all thrilled to do that. Otherwise, you're free to log off, but thank you. And I will follow up with each of you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
I think Superintendent Jett that Mr. Selig was going to give us a brief update on the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
No, that's okay. He can't forget.
He just wants me to repeat what I'm going to do for them tomorrow. So he goes and I'll go after. Go ahead, Brian.
I'm trying to pause long enough so my colleagues feel comfortable logging off without feeling like they're abandoning.
I'm sure you have young children and excited things.
Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
In all seriousness, I hesitate to even do this, but I'm very open to Dr. Carroll's suggestion, but I would also welcome the chance to come back to the committee to try to bring some of what might be presented to you on paper to life a little bit. I'm just a little hesitant that presenting a summary in written form may not make quite clear what some of the steps are that myself and my colleagues are doing to address specifically concerns around unfinished learning. But certainly out of respect for everyone's time, we can shift that to another time. So thank you for allowing me a few minutes of extension here to speak about the dual enrollment program through Quincy College that Principal Cahill and I presented at a previous meeting. We took the suggestion of the committee and we surveyed the 90 or so current honors statistics students, all of whom are seniors at Milton High School. And first, before surveying them, I came into each of the three classes. The teachers were gracious enough to give me a few minutes. This was shortly before Thanksgiving. I explained a little bit about the initiative. I presented and gave them a brochure or a handout to bring home with them. And I described the program to them much as I had to you. I followed that up with a communication to the families and explained that I had been a visitor in their students' classroom, gave them the same information about the program, asked that they take a little bit of time to discuss, and then following the Thanksgiving break, I sent the survey link to the students, and over the course of the first week or so of December, I solicited their feedback. And the survey was essentially first based on the information that had been presented to you and shared, how likely would you be to participate in the dual enrollment program if it had been made available to you for this year. And of the 76 responses that I received, there were 50 of the 76 who responded that they were either likely or very likely to participate. And then I asked them to list what their biggest factor was in the selection of their likelihood. And I'll just read a couple of the responses that I received quoting students here. I like that you can get college credit now for this course, that it might satisfy your math requirements when you go to college. I would save money in college. If it's in the school, then there isn't a bother to travel over to Quincy, and it also gives college credit, which is a good look. So those were examples of responses from students who viewed this opportunity favorably. There were 18 of the 76 respondents who were unsure, and the main reason was that they were wanting to know first whether the school that they intend to attend would accept those credits or not, which is a very understandable reservation on their part. And then there were only a combined 8 students who said they were unlikely or very unlikely. And it was evident from their explanation for their choice that in some cases there was misunderstanding that this did not mean they needed to attend Quincy College for those credits to be worthwhile. I gave them an opportunity to share any other thoughts or information that they wanted. And I'll share a couple of quotes there as well. Quote, I was really excited to hear about this opportunity and was disappointed when I found out that I couldn't do it. I wish it was available to us this year. Hopefully the kids next year have this opportunity. It seems great. I wish it was available to us. I think this program would be amazing. I'm disappointed that the seniors won't be able to do it this year, but I hope the underclassmen take full advantage of it. And then what I did to sort of address questions that came up at the during the presentation about how many students would likely need financial support in order to take advantage of this opportunity. I took the 50 students who said that they were either likely or very likely based on the presentation to participate if it were available to them this year, and disaggregated those by race, ethnicity, whether they were on an IEP or not, and then whether they met the DESE guideline for financial aid or not. Forgive me, I don't know the exact term. I guess maybe it's just free and reduced lunch that is that barometer. And so in that particular category, 5 of the 50 students do meet that threshold for qualifying for free and reduced lunch. So if we were either to reduce the cost of the Quincy College credits proportional to what Mr. Kelly described earlier for the AP exams and cut it in half, then we would be coming up with $750 to support those 5 students. Now, again, I'd like to believe that we would have more than 50 potentially, but again, if we're just using this as a representation of the population who might take advantage if this program is offered for next year, we'll just stick to the numbers as they are. If we want to reduce their cost to 0, then we'll be responsible for coming up with the $1,500 for those 5 students. Happy to answer any other questions that you have, either about the demographics of the students that I analyzed or just in general with the information that I've presented today.
Yeah, go ahead, Beverly. Member Rostand, you had a question, sorry.
No, thank you for doing the research. It really does help give some context to this. And during the second presentation, there was a representative from Quincy College, and she appeared willing to accommodate some sort of an arrangement to provide free seats or something that was less than nothing. Have we, I know you're initially sharing this with us. Would it be fair to say that you're willing to engage her about offering for the number of students that enroll, 10% would get a tuition waiver from Quincy College? Is that something you're comfortable asking her to do?
I'm certainly comfortable asking. I have a different memory of her presentation, though. It was my understanding that there was not leeway available to the tuition fee from Quincy College. I know she mentioned that they're always looking for grant opportunities to supplement the cost to students who participate in it, but my memory's not great, so it could be that either we heard different things or I missed that. But
she didn't use those exact terms, but my question to her was around, does every school in dual enrollment have this similar contract? And she said yes. And then I asked her about their willingness to negotiate something different for Milton. And that is something that she agreed to. So I'm now extrapolating the agreement to say, if we're giving you a cohort of students who are willing to engage and pay Quincy College $300, are you willing to provide free tuition for 10% of those students? So essentially honestly, it's just a contract negotiation at a very simple level. I think it's worth asking. The worst she could say is no.
This is exciting because I specifically chose education, so I'd never have to negotiate a contract, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
And honestly, half the time in life is just asking, because most people will say yes. I'm sure she would love to get the 90% of the paying customers. That would make her heart sing.
Dr. Craighead.
I have a very similar memory to Brian's. It was clear to me that she would not budge on contract negotiations, and she said that the contracts with all schools are pretty much the same. And just on another note, Brian, there are lots of contract negotiations in education, and I've been a part of many of them. But yeah, I mean, I agree, it's certainly worth asking, but it was my impression that there was no leeway for free seats.
I say we ask and see what she says. Why not?
And really do explain that 90% of the customers are capable of paying if she can accommodate 10%.
We would definitely ask.
Yes, absolutely. We are working with a little bit of urgency insofar as whether this gets added into the program of studies for next year as part of the updated description of the honor statistics course.
Yep.
I know that that's going to be presented by Principal Cahill at least at the next meeting on the 19th. And so it might be necessary to decide now whether if the response from Quincy College, from Megan specifically, is that they're not willing to accommodate that request, if that's a deal breaker for us or not. And maybe I'm adding urgency that isn't in fact there. I'd feel a little bit outside of my lane here, probably speaking more in terms of Principal Cahill's expertise in the timing of these things.
Mrs. Selig, I'll give you 1 second. I'm going to have see what Dr. Carroll has a question, and then I'm going to come back to your comment about the urgency. Go ahead, Dr. Carroll.
Thanks. A community member put in the chat, actually a question I was wondering, which was, in addition to the research and follow-up, thank you so much, Brian, around the Quincy College opportunity. In the first place, we had also been presented with an initial exploration around Curry and a separate dual enrollment program. Has that been explored similarly, like as something we're considering still for next year? Or are we mostly moving forward with the focus on this Quincy College opportunity at this point?
I'm afraid that I don't know the answer to that. My understanding about the Curry College partnership was it was initially going to be for a course in the social studies department. I know that what distinguishes the Curry program from the Quincy College one is that for Curry College, students need to attend the class on campus. As I explained with Quincy College, the students are taking the class within Milton High School with their, teacher in the Milton department. But beyond that, I'm afraid I don't have an update about where things stand with the partnership with Curry College.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. That's a good question. We can ask Principal Cahill. But to your point about the urgency, so according to my calendar, we have the presentation or the delivery of the program of studies at our January 19th meeting, but the approval of it at our February 2nd meeting. So we can follow up with you, Superintendent and Principal Cahill, about asking Quincy College and then having an answer before our next meeting in January. Then we can discuss it because we still have a little bit of time before the February 2nd approval. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to the committee? Gives us a little bit more time, and to remember to rest any point, she can say no, but she might, given that we have good data here, she might say yes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And one last question in there. Curry College seems to has their own students in the hybrid, so maybe MPS could also be online. Keep in mind that Curry College is in a hybrid for this academic year. What we're talking about is for the year 2022-23. So just so there was someone that put that into the chat. Any other questions for that? And we could follow up and give you an update on the 19th.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Selig. Thank you to our department heads, curriculum coordinators. I hope you guys have a good night and get some rest. See you back in the office tomorrow.
Bye. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
So I am going to do my best to try and give you a quick update. And there's a lot to update regarding COVID, but I'm gonna try to be as quick as possible. If you don't mind, I just wanna, am I able to share my screen? I just wanna share my screen very quickly. Let me know if you can see it. All right, perfect. So basically, this is information as of today. I'm gonna kind of go through it quickly. I plan on sending an email to all families tomorrow as part of the blog as well. And I know some people may not read it, so I'm giving a quick update right now. Total positive cases between 12/23/21 and 1/5, which is today, 22 at 5 o'clock. We had a total of 72 staff positive and 231 students. As you can see, breaking it down by individual schools, staff, and students, that's how it will be reported in the blog moving forward. The reason why it's from 12/23/21 to 1/5/22, that's how Rob Curtin from DESE, that's how the commissioner asked us to report it over the course of the last couple of weeks. Typically, we do 1 week at a time, which is from Wednesday evening after 5 o'clock all the way to the next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. So it's a 1 week in the middle of the week. It doesn't go from Monday to Friday. So as you can see, we had a significant impact over the course of the last couple of weeks. I don't have a slide for you here today, but I just wanted to read some numbers, which I would put in the blog on Monday. First of all, these numbers do not include any faculty or staff member that was out on a regular sick day who's not COVID, maternity leave, personal day, bereavement. Unfortunately, we had a couple of staff who lost a family member and was out for bereavement, or Family Medical Leave Act. That's the acronym for FMLA. I forgot to spell that out. I do apologize because I can't assume that everybody knows what those acronyms mean. But on Monday, we had 78 staff out, 747 students across the district. Yesterday, Tuesday, we had 79 staff out, 704 students across the district. And earlier today, we had 77 faculty and staff out with 652 students. Now, I'll talk a little bit about why that is and how COVID is impacting us. But I wanted folks to know, because there was a lot of conversation leading up to Monday, why aren't we delaying? Why aren't we canceling school? Why aren't we going remote? First and foremost, remote option right now is not an option for the district. And if it impacts our staff where we can't receive students, we have to follow protocol, and that's reaching out to DESE. And it's a 2 to 3 prong process where we got to ask for approval. But there's a lot of emphasis on keeping students in the building as long as we're doing it safe. So how are we keeping them safe? I just want to remind the general public of our mitigating strategies, which is continuing to wear masks. The physical distancing should be maximized to the greatest extent possible. Now, I just want to speak to that because some people automatically equate that with either 6 feet or 3 feet. That's not necessarily the case in certain classes, but we try to say we keep them socially distanced as best we can. I think we went through this all of last year with our enrollment numbers and our space challenges. It is very difficult to maintain 6 feet or 3 feet in all classes. We talked to the principals. We held a meeting. We communicated all last week. I held a meeting on Sunday, the 2nd at 1 o'clock, and then we did a follow-up check-in at 6 o'clock to check on our staffing. But I asked all administrators to the best of their ability to face the seats, the desk and chairs, and students in the same direction whenever possible. The operative word or phrase is whenever possible. We also have air purifiers in all classrooms and offices that are on during the school day. Classroom and office windows remain cracked open, allowed to help enhance the number of air exchanges. That is the same thing with the rooftop units that remain open to enhance with the number of air exchanges. We will continually to strongly encourage hand washing for both staff and students, and we will continue the daily health screening. That number 8 is very important for families to adhere to. If your child is sick, our symptomatic testing is not set up for you to send your child in sick. Our symptomatic testing is for a child who goes through the day and maybe midday to late early afternoon who starts to feel sick. That's where the testing is. We don't want you to put your child on the bus or send them into school early in the morning if they're sick with some of the symptoms. Again, you could go to the website, Milton Public School website, for all of our COVID-related information. And we ask you to go there because, as you could see from the week before vacation to now, the guidance, the protocols, the policies are constantly changing, when what we don't want people to do is print them out, put them on the fridge, because what's good today could change tomorrow. And so it's very important that you refer to the website. We'll continue on with what we're doing to keep, we're going to continue with our test and stay program and symptomatic testing for students. Now, again, test and stay is for students who are considered a close contact within the school environment. And that's very important. It's not for faculty and staff. We're doing something different with faculty and staff, encouraging them to do, but we need to keep the number of tests that we have on hand to actually go through the protocol with our students. I should also say, and I apologize, I don't have the exact number, but I know prior to the vacation, it was a very small percentage, less than 10% of the students who entered into the test and stay protocol actually came up with a positive case. And then some of them were ruled out. I gave that updated number at the last meeting. Some of them were ruled out with a PCR test. So I just want to say it shows that in the school environment, our students are a little safer. Unfortunately, outside of school is where we're seeing students contract the virus for the most part. And we're working with those students and their families. We will continue to encourage students to wear masks. Now, this is a little slight change. It's not a state policy. So before people get a little upset about it, we're going to encourage students to wear masks outside as well, on the playground, as best as we can if they go outside for recess. It is not a state mandate, so we can't mandate that. But some students and families, if you want to encourage your child to wear a mask for additional safety while outside for recess or physical education, we encourage you to have that conversation with your students. We're going to encourage them, but all principals have been notified. If a student has an issue with that, we can't mandate that, but we think that that's an extra leverage or mitigating factor. As you just saw in the first slide and what I reiterated in terms of the number of students out because of COVID, that is an area where it's a concern for outdoor activity. So I just said that, and we will continue to encourage students and staff to speak to their pediatrician or the primary care physician about the vaccination, getting vaccinated and the booster shots. And then finally, we encourage students to eat. In terms of lunch and breakfast, we're going to encourage students to eat. And when they finish eating, then that's when they put their mask back on, and then they can have that socializing opportunity with their peers. Again, we think that because our cafeteria areas are kind of tight with the number of students, for those who don't know, this year we added a fourth lunch at the Collycott Cunningham, we added a fourth lunch at the Pierce Middle School, and we added a fourth lunch at the high school to kind of lower the numbers. If you go to Tucker, the Tucker is splitting their cafeteria where they're using a small section of their gymnasium for the overflow for cafeteria for our students during lunches to help students socially distance when masks are off. How are we supporting our staff? Saturday, January 1st, with the donation from DESE, we were able to distribute approximately 340 rapid antigen tests to faculty and staff. And for those who didn't make it, the whole goal was trying to get people to test on Sunday, at least 24 hours before entering into school. Some people weren't able to make it, but also some people got tested somewhere else, whether it was the DPW or somewhere else, free testing. So many of our faculty and staff did that. And for those who wanted to, because we had the supply for faculty and staff, we asked staff to come to the high school from 3 to 4:30. I do want to commend a lot of our faculty and staff and our custodial staff who came in on the holiday and were prepared to pick up the test on Friday, New Year's Eve, but it was a delay with the test being delivered or being available for districts to pick up on Friday. So, and then we also notify all staff and students, well, or I should say all staff and families, of testing site options. Our goal is to try to funnel this information to families as often or as specific as possible to let them know that there are different options. I understand wherever you went for a PCR test this past weekend, it was swamped. There was anywhere from 2 hours to 3 hours delayed because people were coming back from the holidays. Oh, excuse me. How can we continue to prioritize in-person learning? I say work collaboratively. That includes students, staff, families, community programs, the Board of Health, that's what BOH stands for, and to enforce mitigating strategies in and outside of school. It can't be the sole responsibility of the Milton Public Schools. As I talked about with the test and stay, we're not seeing a lot of schools spread. So students are coming into the building, faculty and staff are coming into the building with positive cases. And if folks have been following the science or the update from the medical professional, Omicron is a lot more contagious than the Delta in your typical COVID-19. So that's why we're seeing a significant spread in numbers of well over 20,000 a day in the Commonwealth. And part of that, and that's even interesting with folks being vaccinated. The good news is we're not seeing a lot of the folks who get this latest COVID-19 or Delta or Omicron. I don't know how they ascertain which one is which, but we're not seeing many people get seriously ill, at least not within our school community, which we're very thankful for. Once again, consider getting vaccinated. When in doubt, stay out. This was a letter that went home to excerpts from the letter that went home to all families, Milton Public Schools families. And then and if you stay out, just call before 8:30 to report your student's absence. That call should go to your individual school. It should not come to the superintendent's office. I feel that a lot of those calls on Monday and Tuesday, I got to tell you, it makes it much easier if you just call your individual school. You can call the sick line. Masks will continue to be required until further notice. We did have a call with the commissioner. Masks is still mandated until at least January 15th. I don't know if that is continue, but that is going to be up to the state. And then again, if you haven't signed up for the test and stay to give us consent, we encourage you to do so, because if your child becomes a close contact, then they're going to have to quarantine, and there's no option for them to do it. And we're not going to test your child if we don't have consent on file. So I encourage you to do that. The new guidance, many of you probably heard over the course of the last week, DESE, DPH, and CDC, even though it's not on there, updated the isolation protocols, and then they go into effect immediately. Students and staff, if positive, could have to isolate themselves for 5 days, and they could come back on day 6 if they're asymptomatic or if their symptoms significantly are reduced. And in the letter that we sent to all families, obviously I'm not going to go through all of the links on here. It shows you what the symptoms are. We encourage people to really familiarize themselves with those symptoms because your efforts as parents and guardians, along with the students, particularly those in middle and high school that are really a little more independent, their vigilance helps us minimize the spread within schools, and it also allows us to keep the schools open. Quarantine protocols, DESE and DPH are looking at updating those. As of the time I put this quick slide together, we did not get any updates. We did have a call today. Unfortunately, I was about 10 minutes late on that call because we were dealing with a situation within Milton Public Schools. But I plan on getting the update, and if there's an update that I can put into that communication, I will in the blog, and then I will probably do a separate individual email regarding COVID stuff on Friday. And then MPS vaccination rates. Now, this is very important. I do want to let folks know, as I opened up this presentation, there was a lot of follow-up. There was a lot of contact with our nurses. So this week was not the time for our nurses to go through and sift. Our biggest thing was trying to make sure that we had faculty and staff in front of students, but also making sure that our nursing staff was on top of all of the COVID positive cases with our faculty and our students. So for the most part, 90% of our faculty and staff are vaccinated, with a small number, if my memory serves me correctly, we only had 9 exemptions, which was good. That number could be a little higher. I just didn't get the last update, But that 90% includes all of the things that I listed here: applied lessons, community schools, coaches, after school clubs, advisor and activity advisors, central office, business office, custodial staff. So anybody that touches Milton Public School students that work in our buildings, we are asking them to be vaccinated. Again, that helps us, and I know this is a last year's phrase, but it helps us protect the paw. And so we're trying to maintain a healthy environment. Vaccination rates amongst our students, grades 7 and 8 students, their vaccination rate is above 80%. I didn't want to put down a number because I didn't get it, but it's definitely above 80%. Milton High School student vaccination rate is also above 80%. Unfortunately, grade 6 students and students at the elementary level, we're not close to 80%. I know that we're not close to 80%, but I don't have the exact number because of the events of the week leading up to it. And then this week where we had so many positive cases, not only in the town of Milton, but not only Milton Public Schools, but the town of Milton and the Commonwealth as a whole. And then the new guidance I referred to about the, and that's pretty much it for the presentation. I would kind of send something out, but what I wanted to do is do it in a way in which you had a visual as I was going through it. And I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Member White.
I just want to say that the DPW yard reported 1,400 tests administered last Sunday. It was the highest amount they've ever done, and they had the highest positivity rate that they've ever recorded. I don't know what that is, but it was the highest ever. I'm not surprised to hear that, though.
So one of the things I should share, and this came up on a call with the Commissioner of Education today. As folks know, there's been a critical shortage in substitutes and faculty and staff as a whole, nursing staff in schools in general. One of the things the commission is doing, and I share this just because it was shared on that meeting today, he's going to be on a conference call with colleges and universities in trying to lobby for them to push forward and have some sort of agreement to provide master's students who are graduating in May some sort of exemption and give them field experience to be able to support public schools moving forward, because it is such a shortage. I think you saw Boston. I don't want to quote everybody's numbers, over 1,000 people out. I was on a conference call. There's so many faculty and staff that are out across the Commonwealth. I'm sure you'll see the numbers. If not, I've not posted today. You'll see it posted by Desi tomorrow at the latest. You'll get some sort of sense of the magnitude of the situation. The other thing, it came up on the December 15th meeting about, do we seek partnerships with like Curry College for teaching? We have a partnership with Curry College. We have Curry College students we have partnership with Curry College, BU, and Boston College. We have student teachers doing their practicum in Milton Public Schools. BU, we do it with the health department. So school adjustment counselors, they work in the Milton Public Schools. And then BC and Curry, we do teachers and sometimes special ed. So we are seeking all opportunities. And I know the commissioner sent out everybody's list of needs to multiple different unemployment offices as well. So there is a concerted effort. For those who don't know, December 1st, we did a MPD, Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education. We did a job fair, and unfortunately for 2 hours, there were very few people that were on that. And this is not isolated to education. This is isolated to all different professions in terms of the shortage. If you look at what the reports today, they say it's the highest number of folks who are either quitting jobs or not going into jobs, or the shortage in all areas. So I just share that with you. I don't know if you have any questions, and I'm sorry to go through that very quickly, but I wanted to be respectful of your time.
Member White, are you finished with your question? Did you have something else to share? Your hand is still up. Well, I can just speak for the committee when we say thank you to everyone in the Milton Public Schools for working so hard to prioritize in-person learning. It's hard to describe what it's like right now to work in a school, because your day is consumed often by COVID related issues that you weren't anticipating at 5 a.m. when the day started, and how quickly those things can evolve during the day. And that it really takes literally every person in a building and in a district to make the day-to-day working of the district happen. So I really, just from my own perspective, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for the hard work. And I know when they use that word heavy lift, that is very appropriate to this situation. Member Rosteni?
No, I thank you both for sharing what you said. And one of the friend of mine who is a Milton parent that was a certified teacher has signed up to be a substitute. And while I am not the expert in this subpool for the Milton Public Schools, if there's a quick plug you can make, Superintendent Jett, about where people can go do that, because I know there are a lot of families that are very appreciative for the sacrifice that our educators are making. And if they want to join in the efforts and make a difference so our kids can stay in school, I encourage the many parents that were very supportive of keeping kids in school during the first phase of the pandemic and today, that they are willing to make an additional sacrifice and volunteer if they're qualified. Not volunteer. Substitutes are paid, let's be clear. But I would like you to put your name in the pool to be considered to support our schools.
And thank you for saying that. And anyone interested could email Assistant Superintendent Janet Sheehan, myself, or Laurie Dunn. Please know that you would just have to go through a Corey check fingerprinting. We have to make sure that even though we're in a tough situation, we want to make sure that we're putting quality people in front of your children. And just one last bit, tomorrow I have the luxury of going back in time and being the high school principal for the day, because we're going to be short administrative staff at the high school level. So that's the kind of challenge that we are having in the Milton Public Schools. And I say that, but the folks that you saw in here earlier tonight, the department heads, unfortunately, we might have to forego some of the work that they were sharing with you that they're doing to make sure that we have our buildings covered. So I just want to let you know it is a very tough time. But we're committed to staying open. This is a lot different than a year ago, a lot different.
Yes, well, thank you, Superintendent Jett. And do you have any other updates or information you want to share with us right now? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you again. Please extend our thanks to everyone in the Milton Public Schools. There's an opportunity now for Citizen Speak. Citizen Speak lasts for about 15 minutes if people are interested. If you would like to speak, you can raise your hand and you will be raised to speak. You would need to state your name. You have up to 3 minutes to speak. We ask that you keep your comments and you do not refer to specific people, but address policies and concerns that you might have that the school committee can address. And we always welcome positive comments as well. So if you'd like to speak at Citizen Speak, please raise your hand and someone will raise you to the panelist, and then you can share what you'd like to share at Citizen Speak.
Chair Abahat, right now, I do not see any hands up. So I give folks another opportunity. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. We'll give you about 5 seconds.
Sure. I know some people put some things in the chat, and we'll be sure to take that information out and try to address it at a future meeting. Or you can always email one of us with a question that you have after you see a presentation if you don't wish to speak at Citizen Speak, and we'd be happy to. We don't answer the questions at Citizen Speak. I should have mentioned that. I forget it every time. But we'd be happy to address those questions. We don't usually, the committee doesn't answer questions at a meeting. We have opportunities to speak to each other, but we'd be happy to address questions you have if you send them to us.
So Chair Abahat, I don't see any hands, and for the most part, I took a quick glance.
Okay.
Excuse me. I have one person that just raised their hand.
Great, welcome.
I just promoted the person to, and I'm sorry, hopefully they see it and their name just erased from the
I see a person right now.
Okay, thank you, because I can't see it anymore.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you all. My name is Mona Abuzina, and I am a parent of currently one sophomore. So it was very interesting to hear the discussion about the AP, and a graduate of Milton High School just this last spring. And I just want to thank each of you. I know it's been a super long night for all of your contributions every day, and in these high level, discussions that relate to equity, belonging, and inclusion. I just want to make some quick comments about a specific thing, especially as we were talking about the school calendar and the length of the day, about how calendars are such important artifacts that that commemorate, that designate civic, cultural, religious, and historical dates, and how inclusive calendars are central to ways that we operationalize diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. As you can probably tell from my picture, I am a practicing Muslim, and having grown up personally in public schools, not in Milton, I remember feeling very left out by the calendar. And I know that there have been lots of conversations within Milton Public Schools about how, moving towards more inclusive calendars. My own kids' experiences at Pierce and at Milton High School have absolutely been tremendous, with Principal Jett at the time and others. But I want to just talk about the importance of acknowledging and moving towards more inclusive language, not just in the calendars, looking at some of our colleagues and maybe in Boston Public, recognizing the beginning of Ramadan, recognizing Jewish holidays, recognizing Three Kings Days, other important areas, not just on the calendar, but providing educators and family members with more windows and mirrors about okay, now that we've noted those calendars, what does that mean? What's the so what in terms of if you're a coach, if you're a teacher, what should you do? If you're a peer, what should you do to better honor and be a good neighbor, friend, peer to the other students, the staff and faculty. So I just want to thank you all, and it feels maybe like a small thing in the middle of all the discussions of COVID and AP, but sometimes small changes really mean big things in our personal lives. So just really appreciate and look forward to more conversations in the future about this and many other issues.
Thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing your perspective and your thoughts. We really appreciate it. And we agree with you. Or I agree with you, as myself can speak.
Chair Everhart, that is the only hand that I saw that was raised.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you, Superintendent Jett. And if you're a member of the community and you were watching tonight and anything you'd like to ask a question or have a comment about something, please email us and we can attempt to address it at a future meeting. So thank you very much for the citizen who spoke this evening. I appreciate it a lot. All right, so the next thing is the chair's report. I do not have much on the chair's report. The calendar is on the chair's report this evening. And I'm trying to find my notes here. So what we're going to do tonight is look at a draft calendar. So one of the things we have to do is we have to have a draft calendar on which to base our conversation moving forward. So but the point of having the draft calendar tonight is to make sure that we know when school is going to start, when we're going to start school, so that Superintendent Jett and the principals and assistant superintendents can plan for those professional development days at the start of school, before school starts, and then sort of have an end date. We have not finalized or cemented in place what we might add or change to the calendar, but the calendar is basically, if you think about a scope, what is the scope of the school year? You have to have 180 days for the students, 184 days for teachers and educators. And so we just want to have a draft calendar. I can share, if I can find it. Just give me a second in my things here from Charlene. Hold on, guys. I can share the calendar on the screen, I think, maybe. With Zoom tonight, you never know how things are going to go. Oh, it's disabled. Maybe someone else would like to share the calendar. I don't know. Maybe not. Do you all have a copy of the calendar? Superintendent Jett, if you enable sharing, I can share the calendar. Or not. Okay, that's okay. I know it's late. I'm sorry. But
give me a second. I just might have to click on your name and give you these options.
I think you go down to with a little, where is it? next to me. Yeah, maybe on the little.
Yeah, I see it. It says allowed to multi-pin, maybe?
No. There's an actual piece that says allowed to share. Multiple presenters share.
Okay, hold on.
I think it's under the security icon. Do you see something that looks like a shield?
Yep, hold on.
If you click on that, you'll see something like share screen with participants or panelists or something.
It looks different when I do it at work, so I apologize for not.
Yeah, I don't see that, Member
Okay.
Ross. I see it. It just says school committee. It gives me the webinar ID, the host,
That's
the
okay.
passcode, the link, participant ID, the encryption.
Yeah, that's a different one because the one I normally
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So I can't share the calendar, so I apologize.
Let
for
me
not.
see if I could get it. You can start talking and I'll try to get it.
To the conversation to that, I hope she doesn't mind if I say her name, Mona, that she spoke this evening, that the calendar is a great place to start, or a small place to start, to think about more equity and inclusion in our community. So, because a lot of times a calendar is just something you put on the agenda, you look at, you review every year, you approve the calendar, and you don't have an opportunity to really have a conversation and think about what does the calendar reflect about what we think about and believe in our community about holidays and about observances and about our family. So I think the calendar is a great place to start. If you can pull it up on your own screen, you can see that Charlene changed the whole way that it works. Charlene Roach, and she added a color coding to represent different meanings of different days, and then she also added important dates and religious and cultural holidays as well. Not necessarily that we would observe, as a day off from school, but to be mindful of and aware of as we're planning curriculum and sporting activities and other school-wide events. And so those have all been added to the bottom of the calendar, to the bottom of the calendar there. And so if you go to the first day of school would be August 31st. And so you can see that the 29th and 30th are considered to be PD, professional development days. And that the last day of school that is reflected currently on this calendar would be, I think it says June 21st. And then the green days on the calendar represent makeup days or snow days. But we haven't determined yet if we're going to add any additional holidays, which might mean one more additional day, which would add a day to the end of the year. And then Superintendent Jett did mention that he did put on this calendar some early release or PD days, but I don't know, Superintendent Jett, if you mentioned the late start days. Are they not on here?
They are not on here I'm looking at this calendar, so I do apologize, but it was one per quarter.
Okay.
I can get that to you guys ASAP. I do apologize.
That's okay. That's totally fine. We're just working on this. It's just a draft of the calendar. And oh, thank you. There it is. I was looking on my own screen. And so we would still need to, this is just a draft. We were going to actually need to approve the calendar on a future date. Member Rosemary.
Thank you. And I have a few things to say about this. Want to thank Charlene Roach for reformatting the calendar, which I think is a vast improvement over our former calendars and is modeled after the Cambridge and Boston Public Schools calendars. I think the listing of important dates is very helpful for parents and community members to be able to look up quickly dates for when there's no school, first and last days of school, early release days, vacation weeks, et cetera. And then the section about the listing of religious and cultural holidays, along with the note that you mentioned, Margaret, about although school is in session when these holidays fall on weekdays, teachers should be mindful and accommodate students observing these holidays. And we discussed this a little bit with Superintendent Jett, and I think the public might appreciate knowing that there is even further guidance that Superintendent Jett provides to staff to accommodate the observances of our Jewish students. For example, it's the expectation of Milton Public Schools to not assign homework, test, quizzes and or hold events or athletic practices and games during the Jewish holidays. And I just have to say, for myself as a Jewish parent whose children all went through the Milton Public Schools, this guidance was much appreciated in support of our family and our children being able to not miss out on activities when they were out of school for the holidays. And I think that we should think about, and we can think about, how to extend those and other accommodations to students who observe other religious practices. I've been in touch with and heard from both a Jewish parent about consideration for a second Jewish holiday on our calendar, and Dr. Abuzena, who just spoke earlier about the Islamic holiday observances. And through my conversation with Dr. Abuzena, I realized that this topic has more to it than just a date on a calendar, that we might also consider ways in which we can better accommodate our students of diverse religious backgrounds. And after that conversation, I spoke with Dr. Carroll about referring this discussion onto the policy subcommittee to explore this issue in more depth at our next policy subcommittee meeting. And then the policy subcommittee can bring a recommendation back to the full school committee at a later date. And we have a policy subcommittee meeting scheduled for January 24th. And so if we could discuss this at that meeting and then bring a proposal back to the school committee at our February 2nd meeting, I think that would give us time to process all of the things that we want to do in our calendar. I understand the urgency for setting a date for the first day of school as soon as possible so that we can do the planning and everyone can make their plans around the beginning of school. And so I wonder whether we might want to tonight just agree upon that first day of school date and then come back to vote on a proposal of a full academic calendar at our meeting on February 2nd. And one last thing that I just wanted to mention is I was in touch with Rabbi Benjamin from my synagogue, who I confer with about a variety of things, but he just happened to be heading into a Milton Interfaith Clergy Association meeting right after our call, and he sent back a statement that from MICA, the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association, lauding the Milton School Committee in its effort to investigate the issue of acknowledging and honoring Islam in the Milton Public Schools calendar. So those are my comments and suggestions, and Margaret, I'll go with whatever you think is best in terms of what we need to take a vote on tonight.
Sure. I'm thinking, Superintendent Jett, that if we need to add to the late start dates, that we might want to approve the draft the next time as opposed to this time. I really think that those should be on the calendar. Would that be okay with you? Okay. Is anyone else at this moment like to add anything to this conversation? So the takeaway from this conversation is we thank the citizen for speaking. We thank Charlene Roach for all the work she did on advising the calendar. We're going to refer the full calendar back to policy subcommittee. And then we are going to approve a draft calendar at our next school committee meeting, which will include the late start dates from Superintendent Jett. Does that sound like a good plan of action from here?
So just noting that will still be before our policy subcommittee.
That's correct. That's fine. We're just essentially, when you're approving a draft calendar, you're putting it out there for families to look at and notice and comment on, and then have a final calendar at the end of the process. Yes, Dr. Carroll.
Oh, thank you. And I agree. This is a big improvement, and I think a great conversation to be having. I also know that one question had been raised about adding to the current list of cultural and religious holidays, Eid, which would be taking place in April, I think, of 2023. And so that could maybe be reflected in the next version of the draft. But I'm also wondering, and perhaps we can discuss next time about, maybe this is part of the discussion we have in policy is, the process perhaps for soliciting that input from the community to make sure that we can reflect, holidays that we may not be aware of right now, but that we have members of our community who are celebrating these holidays. And maybe that's something we can think about, is there a way we collect that input from families on an annual basis? Just as we revise the calendar year by year, making sure that we can stay updated with that. But thank you, Member Rosemarian, for your attention to this, and to Dr. Abuzena and other members of our community who've given us really important feedback that I'm really sort of glad that we're responding to. And thank you, Charlene, for taking the time to help us make progress.
Right. And go ahead, the superintendent check. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Dr. Carroll, to your point, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the notes that I have. Eid in 2023 falls on April 21st, which is during the April vacation. And the other holiday, which I believe it was listed on here, is Ramadan, which is on March 23rd. If we add that, if we add that as a holiday, just to let you know, that would push the end date to June 22nd. So I just wanted to throw that out there, but that's something that I would add, especially Eid. I would put that on the calendar. I'm just trying to look at it, and I apologize, I can't even see it on my own screen. I don't know if I'm just getting.
No, it's just you're tired, and the font is small to fit it all on one page.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Carroll, do you want to finish up?
No, thank you, Superintendent Jett, for doing that quick research. And I do think that is clearly a conversation, in terms of which holidays are being sort of recognized with a day off of school. That's sort of one set of holidays. And then the additional holidays that we, like as you were talking about, Ada, that we may not have a day off for everyone from school, but that we still can add and have them listed here. And, obviously if it's over an existing break, then it's less relevant to make sure we're not scheduling conflicts and things like that. But I see the need to balance, not taking too many days, but certainly adding them. When I was talking about just clarifying my own comment, getting input from the community, I was more so thinking about these religious and cultural holidays that would not be a day off per se, but that we could raise awareness about. So
yes,
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll. No, that's what I was thinking, the same thing. Member Ross Denny.
I just wanted to add on to what Dr. Carroll said, and the point is that there are two Eids. There's Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr. So when we start to think about the policy, just acknowledging that they are both religious holidays. And as we make the decision as to whether or not there's a day off or if it's just an acknowledgement on the calendar, that both are represented.
Thank you, Member Ross Denny. And this brings me up what I've been thinking a lot about the calendar in general. Last year when we voted the calendar, we did receive some communication from community members about the change to Indigenous People Day, and that we never discussed that as a school committee in a group. And we had not discussed it. It was a change in the calendar that had happened that we thought coincided with a larger change in the Commonwealth, but was not reflected actually in the full Commonwealth. And that comment from that citizen prompted us to start thinking about the needs to really be more clear in our conversations at school committee about the calendar as really as our citizens spoke this evening about it being an artifact and a reflection. So I appreciate all the community members who reach out to us and share their thoughts. It's important to hear your comments and your thoughts. It really is. Member Rosemary.
Yeah, this is all wonderful food for thought. And I think the thing that I just want to emphasize also that we should think about is, the guidance that I referred to, that I think the district is doing really well in terms of the Jewish holidays, and guidance for staff about what are appropriate accommodations and appreciated accommodations for those holidays, that we should be able to come up with similar kinds of recommended accommodations for our students who are, say, fasting, or other who've been up late the night before for celebration. That guidance for our staff, I think, would be very meaningful, and I know is something that we're very capable of doing.
And I think it addresses that students see themselves reflected, families see themselves reflected in the way we represent ourselves in the community. And that is one of the first steps towards inclusion and equity, that you see yourself in the community and especially in the schools. So I'm very grateful to everyone for their work, and to the community members who are suggesting and supporting us. And I look forward to continuing this conversation as we move forward. So we'll come back to this for the next meeting, and then again at the following meeting. The last thing I had on here was just the Milton School Committee, Subcommittee, and Advisory Committees. I just wanted to note that we had added Member White to the Curriculum and Advisory Committee, and we had added Member Carroll to the Health and Wellness Committee. Those lists are now updated to the proper names and people, just so that you have them and you're aware of them. We do not need to vote on them. I just wanted them to be updated and you had them, and that they would be properly represented on the website. All right, approval of vendor warrants. I know that Dr. Craig has a very early meeting tomorrow. She's going to be very upset.
Yeah, so after my report, I'm going to leave the meeting because I have a super early meeting tomorrow, noting the late hour. I did remove 5A for the budget presentation. I just want to say a couple of things about that. First of all, Assistant Superintendent Amy Dexter has been working very hard on it. It's in great shape. The holdup is not because of her at all. It's because the Finance Subcommittee met yesterday. We had some additions and adjustments that we wanted to make. They weren't fully fleshed out. We didn't have time to get it ready to present tonight. So we plan, and I'll say plan, I'm not going to promise this time, Chair Eberhard. We plan to present it to the full school committee on our next meeting on the 19th. Okay, so the last thing is the approval of vendor warrants. I'm gonna make a motion for both vendor warrants at the same time. I'd like to make a motion to approve vendor warrant number 26, payable on December 23rd, 2021 in the amount of $243,233.74, and vendor warrant number 28, payable on January 6th, 2022 in the amount of $288,512.54. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member White. I think this has to be a roll call vote, and there's a lot of money involved, so let's just do that. Member Rosemarin?
Yes.
Member Ross Denny?
Yes.
Member Carroll?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Chair Eberhard?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. Thank you to the Finance Subcommittee for the hard work you're doing on the budget. I know thank you for taking the time and really, really going through it when you present it. That'll be very helpful to the committee. So thank you so much, everyone.
And by the way, my early morning meeting is a meeting that's related to school committee business. So
we're sorry.
Anyway, more of the same tomorrow morning. Good night, everybody.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, Dr. Carroll, for our policy subcommittee, we have the second reading of policy GCF, our professional staff hiring policy.
Yes, thank you so much. Would it be helpful for me to share my screen to walk through a couple of points on this piece? Am I able to do that?
I wish that we could figure out why we cannot figure that out.
If not, I'll just be very specific as I talk through what we hopefully are all able to look at in the attachment that we have. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is the second reading of this policy, which has been much discussed previously at the policy subcommittee level. I want to highlight, and hopefully the version that you're looking at has some yellow highlighted sections because this document has many track changes. I'm going to explain that these highlighted sections plus one additional piece, the highlighted pieces are the result of my conversation with our legal counsel, who had some minor suggestions about changing the language. And because these suggestions, in my view, don't rise to like substantial changes to the policy as proposed, I think we can still just go through them and proceed with the second reading. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. So
try sharing now, Dr. Carroll. Try sharing now.
Okay. Oh yeah, thank you. All right, do you see this policy?
Yes.
Okay, so this one here was, let me make sure. This is the first one. We're at the top of the policy. So this suggestion was simply to simplify the language there. Just have it say the superintendent or designate. That's that only change. This proposed change was simply to rather than state the full titles of those two assistant superintendent positions, to instead just say may, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the school committee may appoint the assistant superintendent and fix their compensation. And that's really in the event that those specific titles in the future should ever change. The point is the school committee can, that's a role that we have for the assistant superintendent level positions. And so that would apply even if those specific titles should perhaps shift at any point in the future.
Lizzie?
Yes.
Lizzie, can I just add one quick question on that one?
Mm-hmm.
We'd put an S at the end of assistant superintendent. So because there are two?
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now here's where it gets a little more exciting, but it's not over. Let me just explain what this is. Right here, you can see that this really was just our attorney's suggestion to streamline the language. It doesn't actually change what the policy is saying, but it just kind of clarifies the grammar of the sentence. The key point remains that a representative screening process is in place for principal and district-wide director level positions. This is a change that was in our first reading of the policy. This sentence here, does not appear in the final version you were emailed. That was an oversight on my part. This is something we discussed in our conversation on December 15th when we did the first reading, and I had said that I would add this in, and I then neglected to do that and in the final version you received. So the point of this was to just define what the representative screening committee already is in practice, and to just kind of have that reflected in our policy, which is that the screening committee includes this was based on my notes from what you had shared, Superintendent Jett, that it includes this combination of teachers, administrators, students, and community members, including parents and guardians. so that was the only thing that was added in based on our discussion last time. This piece is bolded. This was added in by our attorney to kind of clarify that nature of the training that the committee will receive, which is on the interview selection process in regards both to the previous sentence, anti-bias and confidentiality. So that's just a little bit more specific that it's around the interview piece. And then finally, the latest update, this sentence, which was in our first, which we looked at last time, that mentioned the concept of a possible executive session report. That is not appropriate per the legal guidance. And so what would be appropriate in its place, which I think would also speak to the spirit of the conversation that led to adding that sentence in the first place, was just this final sentence. If the school committee has questions concerning the hiring process, the committee may require the superintendent, which is a sort of a more general way to address that. And we can do that through the means available to us already by law in terms of what the school committee's role is. Does anyone have any questions about any of these changes or comments, obviously? Ada, I see your hand raised. Member Rosmarin.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble going back and forth on my screens and looking at it a little bigger and on mine, but I'm just a little unsure about the two different things. There's one that's on the second page, about halfway down, that says the superintendent has the final say in determining who will be fired, but it is expected that the screening committee's input will be a factor in the decision. Yet earlier on the in the document, under number 4, the school committee has the authority to approve or disapprove the superintendent's recommendations. And I don't know, I just got a little confused there. Is that that we only have the authority to approve or disapprove the superintendent's recommendations for assistant superintendents, and everything else is the superintendent has the final authority? Is that?
Yes, that's correct. That's yeah, and that's right. That's the state law. And so this section 4 above, where the authority to approve or disapprove, that pertains only to those two, well, for us, it's 2 assistant superintendent positions. Okay. The part down below is, and this is committee in this sentence is the representative screening committee, not the school committee. So this is where, you know, this is a screening committee for a principal or a district-wide director level position, a screening committee making recommendations to the superintendent for the that unranked list of finalists that their charge is to present that list to the superintendent. You know, so the 2 sentences aren't really in conflict because they address different
positions.
Yeah, different positions and different committees. Superintendent Jett, can you add further clarification?
Yes, so the screening committee can make a recommendation on who they consider to be the finalists, and they push those 4 individuals forward. Anyone that they push forward, they should have a feeling is more than capable of doing the job. However, the screening committee doesn't have the authority to look at Corey checks, criminal history or fingerprint stuff, so that is the job of the superintendent, assistant superintendent of personnel. So that's why, and it's always conflicted. And I also need to put it out there because in the spirit of transparency, you could have also 5 quality people with the same qualifications, same skill set. But when you only have one position, 4 are not going to get it and 1's going to get it. Then it boils down to what is a fit? What is a fit for whoever's sitting in the seat? Because this is not about James Jett, this is a policy. Whoever's sitting in the seat of superintendent, it's about whether, in addition, with all things equals, who's a good fit that you think will be a good member of your team to work in tandem to move the district forward. So I share that piece. And the other piece is if the school committee decides to not do it, I think that sentence was there, that will be a conversation that will be held during the public meeting and have a discourse, knowing that sometimes there are going to be certain information that would not be shared. If I shared someone's Corey on a public meeting or their results of that, I could be putting myself, compromising my own professional career, but also putting the district in a very compromising situation.
Yeah, I think Ada, sorry, Dr. Carroll, I didn't mean to just interrupt, but I think it's very important for the community to understand that, particularly for any assistant superintendent position in any district, the superintendent makes the recommendation, but the school committee approves the appointment. And it says in the law, there's something about, not making it too difficult to make an appointment. But I do think that's important for people to understand around that those two really important positions in the district. And then to Dr. Carroll's point, the screening committee, I think one of the things you had talked about was about having an opportunity, like a screening committee may wonder and inquire, well, we put these candidates forward and what happened? So that's why we, Dr. Carroll and yourselves put in there about being able to inquire to the superintendent about the process and what happened, and then making that more available to the community. Because it's a layered process. And as Superintendent Jett said, you move 4 candidates forward or 3 candidates forward, and then perhaps someone had their thoughts about who it might be and something else happened. It's always important to be able to follow up and have conversations afterwards. Yeah.
Are people okay if I stop sharing my screen, or would anybody like to look at a different part? Okay. Okay. Does anyone else have comments or questions? Okay, so what do we do now?
So we had the second reading. So we're going to make a motion to improve policy GCF with the amended changes.
Okay, and then Charlene will be able to create the clean version of the.
Correct. And that will go up on the website and be part of our
policy. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm doing this.
No, you've done it.
I'm so tired.
Job on this policy. And
Okay.
It's a really important policy, and I think the community was very much invested in it. So I really thank you guys for the hard work that you did, all of you, superintendents and committee members alike.
Yeah. Thanks. I echo that. Gratitude for all of you too. And I'll make that motion to approve this as amended with what we've seen here tonight.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you, Member Rosmarin. Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote for this. Member Rosmarin?
Yes.
Member White?
Yes.
Member Ross-Denny?
Yes.
Chair Eberhardt?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Obviously, Dr. Craighead is not here anymore. Although, of course, she was very much part of this discussion all the way along. So, okay, thank you very much. And we, as far as policy subcommittee report, we have not had a meeting since the last school committee meeting. And as Member Rosmarin was alluding to, we have our next policy subcommittee meeting scheduled not for January, is not until January 24th. and we will have things to discuss there. So that's all for policy for tonight. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Carroll. I don't know if Dr. Carroll or Member Osteni or Member White, if you want to give a brief update on our Curriculum Instruction Advisory Committee. I know you had a meeting, I think, earlier or perhaps before the year ended last year.
We did, and I have some excellent notes that Dr. Carroll took. I was astonished at the level of detail. Thank you very much. So I'd love to briefly give you an overview of the meeting. We met on December 13th at 8:30 a.m. Member Dr. Carroll, Superintendent Jett, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Human Resources, Janet Sheehan was present, as well as Senior Director of Educational Equity, Somali Pak-Martins, Administrator of People Personnel Services, Susan Maselli, and our Director of Data Analytics, Vivu, were all present. So it was like a full house, plus some community members. Much of what we covered was what you saw in the presentation before the holiday break. So I am not going to go through that level of detail because you would have heard most of the same thing twice. But Vivu started off by walking us through the data around disproportionality and explain some of the basic points you've heard about. Primarily the data is around the middle and high school level. They're working on a centralized data collection system, and they're trying to calibrate what would even make that report in terms of student data that would be counted. Susan Maselli is regularly meeting with our principals to collect that data manually while they're waiting to get the system up and running. But she's also earned a grant that would allow her to hire a restorative justice coach, and that person has been hired. They're going to work directly with elementary school students and support our PBIS initiative. Later on in the meeting, Director Pak-Martins also shared that she intends on hiring a restorative justice coach who's going to work directly with the faculty and administrators. So we are going to have a faculty and staff solution as well as a student-based solution. So very pleased for those updates. Relative to unfinished learning, as you saw in the presentation prior to the holiday, there are learning gaps, but they're more prolific in math than they are in ELA. And we are coming up with a series of new interventions that reflect research, and we will be monitoring student progress using iReady and Lexia, and more details to come as both Brian Selig and Assistant Superintendent Sheehan shared. As it relates to advanced placement, we had a long discussion about both the participation rates as well as the students earning a qualifying score, which now we have a clarification, so they're no longer an issue. It's wonderful to share. And we also, at that point, decided to stop going through the data because we knew we were going to see the rest of it on the Wednesday. And we wanted to make sure we had given Director Pak-Martins, as well as Assistant Superintendent Sheehan, the opportunity to give us an update on the anti-racist curriculum and what work has been done. So Director Pak-Martins shared the district's incorporated a lot of work already on different topics. She went through a very long list of a variety of topics. And then Assistant Superintendent Sheehan shared very specific examples about what was happening in elementary schools. She surveyed teachers and basically found out at each grade level across the schools, what are many of the interventions or the lesson plans that are being shared with students around the topic of race and hatred. And it was very helpful. We also plan on having a meeting next Thursday, which I believe is January 13th. Assistant Superintendent Sheehan talked about creating a template that basically allows us to organize what's being done by grade level at schools or across the district, so we can actually see, is every grade being touched in a meaningful way? And she also said that the curriculum review process to ensure that we have the voice from a variety of perspectives is also being implemented. She identified a research-based framework, and that's what the district will be using. And so I don't have enough weeks. That was a meeting that was separate from this, but it's planned for our next get-together. And then we adjourned at 9:40, a little bit late, but I thank everyone who participated. I know it was a heavy lift to get prepared, and people came with their best foot forward and were very candid and shared valuable information that I think people who did attend the meeting was well received. very well received. So thank you all for what you did to make that meeting successful. Any questions?
Thank you, Member Rostetti. Well, I think the two presentations that we've had really magnified and elaborated the hard work that people are doing. And I look forward to hearing more about the template and then the curriculum that we're using with not only with restorative justice, but race and identity across the district as we build that out over the next year or two. So this sounds like wonderful work. So thank you so much, everybody. All right, so we don't have, the last thing on our agenda here is we don't have any old business, I don't think.
Do we have an update on the reporting system?
So I don't, that's a great question. That is old business actually. So that's good to put that there. I always wonder, what's a great question for that?
Yes,
I don't know. Do we have anything or should we have for that?
Yes, I do. And I haven't checked today. Once again, we shared it would be up and done this week.
Okay.
The person who did it had COVID, but I believe it's up and running.
Okay.
You're more than welcome to visit the individual school website and check it. I did not check it today, but you guys can more than welcome to do it. Try to get that answer to you tomorrow.
Okay.
But I did not check it this week, but it should be up and running.
Thank you so much for that update. It makes up for the COVID rates.
Thank you so much for reminding us of that, Member Rossini. So our next meeting will be on January 19th. Right? Yes, the 5th. And we have scheduled to have the Glover Side Council come. I don't know if that's true or not true, but they're on the schedule. The fiscal year 23 budget will be, I think, on the schedule. We will look at the program of studies, but we will not approve it at the next meeting. It will be delivered to us. The calendar will be on the next schedule just for a draft and then further conversation at the policy subcommittee on the 24th. I don't know if we'll have any other subcommittee updates, health and wellness.
We would have had another curriculum instruction advisory committee meeting.
I'll put that on here. I don't know about anything from strategic plan, probably not yet.
Yes, strategic planning. We are having a meeting next week. I will have something more to report on, but it sounds like a very full meeting already. Yes. So I wonder whether it shouldn't.
And if we spend a half hour trying to find the Zoom, I'm so sorry about that. And then the only other thing I was going to say, and it's totally gone from my mind now, so it doesn't matter because I was going to say something and I can't remember what I was going to say. It sounds like a very long meeting, but we can. Oh, I know what I was going to say to you, Member Rosemary. Do we need to do anything for the special town meeting? Like as a committee, do we need to be thinking about that because we're talking about the school building project?
No, we're not.
Oh, we're not.
That's been taken off the table.
How do I not know these things? I'm so sorry. I embarrass myself on a regular basis.
Sorry, no. It was taken off the table. The school building committee knows about it, but I'm sorry, I forgot to alert you. Yeah, when it's okay.
You can alert us at the next meeting.
We have more time.
I'm just feeling guilty that I was like, oh my gosh, probably people are going to ask me questions. I need to prepare.
Yeah. No, we will be going to the May town meeting.
Okay, that's good.
Instead of the February one.
All right. So then I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay. All right. Everyone in favor of adjourning the meeting, raise your hand. Okay. All right. I want to thank you all. I'm so sorry it's very late, but it was a really great meeting. Really, really great meeting. Please take care, everybody. Please take care. The next 2 or 3 weeks will be very challenging, but we'll get through the other side. And we'll see you on the 19th. And I promise we'll try not to be in 3 Zooms at the same time. I'm sorry, guys. Have a great night, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.
So sorry.